All right. Good afternoon, council members and members of the public joining us in person and online. I'm Megan Marshall. I'm the executive officer for the California Interagency Council on Homelessness, or CalICH, and I have the pleasure of starting our meeting today. Thank you for your collective commitment in our shared efforts to prevent and end homelessness in California, and for joining us for our quarterly meeting. As Claire said a few moments ago, but I'll remind folks, this is a 3-hour meeting. And while we do our best to keep time, there's a possibility we may go over at the end in public comment. Prior to this meeting, council members were briefed with a packet, which is also available on our website. And we'll try to leave some time towards the end for general questions from our council members, but we have a very, as always, packed agenda, but very exciting to talk about youth homelessness today with several discussion items for the council's consideration, as well as for contribution from our special guest who we'll introduce in just a bit. All right, so our agenda, we'll get started as we always do with a call to order, tribal land acknowledgement, and roll call. Hoping to adopt the consent calendar from our March meeting. We'll hear from our fantastic co-chairs. Standing in for Secretary Johnson from CalHHS is Brian Kaplan. I will provide a few executive officer updates. We'll hear from our advisory committee co-chairs, our lived experience advisory board, but the bulk of our time together today will be spent on council member department updates by the way of discussing youth homelessness. Then we'll close out with general public comments, final remarks, and adjournment. All right, and as Claire said, but it will repeat here, there will be an opportunity for general public comment at the end of our meeting. We'll allow for maximum 3 minutes for each comment, and while we welcome all public comments and feedback, due to the structure of this meeting we're in, we will not be able to respond. For this reason, if you have specific questions that you would like answered, please email us at calich@bcsh.ca.gov. And with that, the California Interagency Council on Homelessness quarterly meeting is hereby called to order this day, June 3rd, 2026 at, oh goodness, let's see, let's call it 8. I'll be generous, give me a minute, 1:08 p.m. And with that, I will now pass it to CalICH's tribal liaison, Vivila Blossington-Bear, to read our tribal land acknowledgement.
Good afternoon. My name is Vivila, as noted, and for purposes of this meeting, I wanted to share that I'm also an individual with lived experience in the foster care system and with youth homelessness. Thank you. We wish to acknowledge that Sacramento is the unceded homeland of the Southern Maidu, Valley and Plains Miwok, the Misinan people, the Patwin Wintun people, and members of the Wilton Rancheria tribe who have inhabited this landscape since time immemorial. We extend our gratitude to the ancestors of all California Native American tribes and their descendants, as we recognize that wherever we're joining from in our virtual community or in person, we're all on California Native American lands. Thank you, and I'll pass it to Claire.
Thank you, Vivila. So I will move us on to the roll call for the council. This is the attendance roll call. We will need a majority of members or a quorum to officially meet and hold this meeting. Council members, after I call your name, please say present or here. Apologies if I mispronounce any names. And designees, please state your name using a microphone for the record when your council member's name is called. Oh, thank you. All right, Tamika Moss.
Present.
Kim Johnson.
Brian Kaplan for Kim Johnson.
Thank you. Michelle Boss. Thank you. Stephanie Clendenin. Susan Damaris. Thank you. Dina El Tawanse.
Byron Lim presenting for Dina Altoranzi.
Thank you. Margot Cushell. Veronica Lewis. Jeff McCumber.
Brian Bishop on behalf of Jeff McCumber.
Thank you. William McGee. Erica Pond. Oh, Just for the record, sorry.
Stephanie Weldon for Erica Pond.
Thank you so much. Kaina Pereira. Thank you. Kim Rutledge. Thank you. Tony Sertich.
Rebecca Franklin for Tony Sertich.
Thank you. Lindsay Sin.
Present.
Christina Schneider Ashtari.
Present.
Caroline Thomas Jacobs.
Ricky Hammett for Director Thomas Jacobs.
Thank you. Rowena Tomanang.
Stacy Shears, present for Rowena Tomaning.
Thank you. Jennifer Troya. Gustavo Velasquez. And Marina Wine.
Anthony Zito for Marina Wyatt.
Great, thank you. We have a quorum, and I will move us on to our next agenda item, which will be the consent calendar. Agenda item 2 is the consent calendar, which is for regular or non-controversial items that need to be approved by the council via a vote. While we do not expect discussion from members, the council may engage in discussion on any item on the consent calendars if they so choose. We have one item, the adoption of the March 4th, 2026 council meeting summary. Are there any comments from council members? Okay. And since this is an action item that will result in a vote, we will now open it up for public comment. Please keep your comments to this item on the consent calendar only. If your comment is not related to the consent calendar, there will be time for public comment at the end of this meeting. If you are connected through Zoom, select the raised hand icon. For those of us joining by phone, please press *9 to indicate that you would like to comment. You'll be instructed to unmute yourself and you will have 2 minutes to make your comment. And if you are joining in person, please raise your hand if you have a comment. Are there any public comments for the March 4th, 2026 council meeting summary? We see no hands raised. Would anyone like to motion to approve the meeting summary?
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Thank you. We have a motion to adopt and a second. So we will now take a vote. As a reminder, only in-person council members may vote. If you are a designee, please refrain from voting. We will be voting through raised hands and only count those in the room. The categories will be as follows: yes, no, and abstain. And please bear with us while we count. So those who are voting yes, please raise your hand. Great, perfect, thank you. The motion has been approved. The motion passes, and I will now pass it on to Secretary Moss for co-chair opening remarks.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see you all. Lots has happened since our last meeting, so I wanted to just provide a few updates. I'm really looking forward to our discussion on youth homelessness, so thank you all for your preparation and all the great work you're doing. I really feel like I'm starting this conversation with appreciation and gratitude for all of you, because last Friday, HUD released its 2025 Annual Housing Assessment Report, or the AHAR, which we expected in December, but it came to us on Friday. And that provides the final count for the 2025 point in time count for the nation. So this is where every jurisdiction provides that information to HUD. And California, for the first time in more than a decade, has seen a significant reduction in homelessness across the board. We saw a 2.8 overall reduction for the state of California. This includes both unhoused folks who are unsheltered, as well as those who are in shelter. And we saw a 6.8% reduction in unsheltered homelessness, which is quite significant. I remember the days when we were really excited about a 1% reduction in the state. And so it's just testimony to the great work that you all are doing, to the work that our local communities are doing in our quest to address homelessness across the state. So just deep gratitude for the work, and we know how significant it is to make sure that we have the resources and strategies to continue the work. And I think that's what we're all collectively fighting for. Just wanted to also point out that we saw a significant decrease in veterans experiencing homelessness, Secretary Sen. So thank you. And also your incredible team and all the work that your folks are doing on that, as well as unaccompanied youth experiencing homelessness was also decreased in this cycle. So deep gratitude. Thank you all so much. And I think we can pause and just acknowledge that we are moving our work in the right direction. Wanted to also just lift up our HAP investments and our HDIS outcomes. Of course, we have significant work that we're still doing in this area, but I wanted to just convey to the council and to the public that we have now, through our multi-year round 6 HAP awards. So, although these awards are handed out each year, they are able to be distributed and applied multi-year. And we have now served all 58 counties with our HAP investments across the state. 14 of our largest cities, all 44 of our COCs, and our regional grantees have until June 30th of 2029 to invest and fully expend our HAP 6 awards. So just again, testimony to the governor and this administration for recognizing how important it is to make investments in local communities to address this crisis. And we see that these resources are being put to good use and working. So just wanted to make sure we highlight that. The work of the ICH staff is also just phenomenal in relationship to our data collection. You all know before ICH was formed, we did not have a way to baseline our data to address how folks are addressing homelessness locally. And our HDIS system allows us to do that. And our dashboards are now for the public to assess how we're doing with both our resources and how many folks we're serving through our programs. And we've had almost 400,000 people access services and over 115,000 people housed through the work that our communities are doing. Can we take a moment for that? I don't know. That feels significant to me, having been working on this challenge for 2 decades. So just wanting to make sure that folks are aware of our progress, that there are ways in which the public and this council and your teams can see how communities are doing and hold ourselves accountable for the outcomes that we're all driving toward. Lastly, I just wanted to highlight, we are in the midst of the governor's reorganization plan for my agency, for Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency. As many of you all know, last July, the legislature passed the governor's reorganization plan to split our agency into 2. So we will, for the first time, have a standalone cabinet level housing and homelessness agency and a Business Consumer Services Agency. Both of those will begin their official work July 1st of this year. So just 29 days away. And so we have been, over the last many, many months, working toward that launch. I want to just acknowledge Director Velasquez, Executive Director Sertage, Rebecca, all of our partners on the housing and homelessness side. So this agency will be comprised of Cal ICH, Cal HFA, HCD, the Civil Rights Department, which we're really excited to be making sure that our civil rights for all Californians are lifted up both on the housing and employment side. And we've also created our Housing Development Finance Committee, which is a new department really dedicated to streamlining our housing finance system for the state of California. So I know that's a lot of information, but I just wanted to make sure that you all were aware that this work has been underway for many, many months. We've engaged our external and state partners to make sure that we are creating a more durable, centralized and focused agency on the issues of our housing and homelessness crisis. And just really excited that ICH will be a part of that new agency, and working with all of you will make the difference in terms of how we will deliver our housing and homelessness goals to Californians. So if Secretary Johnson were here, I would just show great gratitude to her and her partnership, but just wanted to highlight that that is just weeks away, and really excited about the work that our teams have collectively done. So I will pass it to Brian.
Thank you so much, Secretary Moss, and thank you all. My name is Brian Kaplan. I'm the Deputy Secretary for Policy and Strategic Planning at California HHS, filling in for Secretary Johnson. I usually hang out at that back table, so it's great to be here at this one with you all. As we heard, the main topic of today's meeting is on state investments focused on youth and the role of cross-system partnership in ensuring that we prevent youth and families from experiencing homelessness and housing instability. We're looking forward to hearing from some of our government and stakeholder partners sharing their work in this space, including some of our Cal HHS council member departments. We'll hear from the Department of Social Services and Healthcare Services about their investments in programs focused on youth experiencing homelessness, such as how CalAIM initiatives like enhanced care management and community supports are supporting youth experiencing homelessness, as well as CSS programs such as the Transitional Rent Housing Placement Program. We'll also hear from the Department of State Hospitals and the California Department of Aging about how a strong focus on youth homelessness has significant impacts on health and housing stability across the lifespan and in various settings of care. Further, just wanted to take a moment. As Secretary Moss said, we've really made some strides when it comes to addressing homelessness in the state. But as we've been sharing with this group and our stakeholders, federal attacks on our social safety net and healthcare programs will have major impacts on the populations that we serve, including those experiencing homelessness. This includes the impacts of HR 1 and other attacks on CalFresh and Medi-Cal that are still continuing to this day. We at Cal HHS and across the state are also working hard to mitigate these impacts and working hard with our local and community partners on this effort. I also wanted to share a quick update on implementation of the Behavioral Health Services Act, which goes live on July 1st. Together with our partners in this room and across the state, we are advancing the vision of Prop 1 and the BHSA to build a stronger, more equitable behavioral health system for all Californians, including people experiencing homelessness. All counties and 2 cities have submitted their first draft 3-year BHSA county integrated plans, and these plans will provide a comprehensive and transparent overview of county behavioral health systems. We want to acknowledge all the hard work that went into developing these plans and to congratulate counties on this significant milestone. It reflects strong collaboration among state, counties, cities, local partners, and stakeholders, and the final plans are due on June 30th of this month. In addition, as part of BHSA, the California Department of Public Health has released their final BHSA population-based prevention plan, which is a comprehensive statewide framework designed to prevent suicide, self-harm, and overdose, reduce stigma, and strengthen behavioral health and well-being for all Californians. And finally, the California Department of Healthcare Access and Information, or HCI, has released their draft Workforce Education and Training, or WET plan. This plan seeks to expand and support a culturally competent and well-trained statewide behavioral health workforce. The public comment for this plan closed on May 29th, and HCI is now working on incorporating public comment into their plan. So we're looking forward to all of this implementation work with our partners, and we will share more updates as we have them and are very excited for full launch on July 1st. With that, thank you again for the opportunity to fill in for Secretary Johnson, and we're really looking forward to the meeting.
Thank you both for your opening remarks. Deputy Secretary Brian Kaplan, you're more than welcome to return to the Cool Kids table when Secretary Johnson joins us next. I have just a few updates to offer before we move on in our agenda. So HUD has also recently released the fiscal year 2026 Continuum of Care Notice of Funding Opportunity. And while we're still reviewing the details on our own, as well as with a multi-state effort and our partners in national organization, we anticipate many of the same concerns raised during the previously released NOFO, particularly proposals that could shift away from evidence-based practices. But we'll continue to work with our partners in continuums of care, state departments, and national organizations to better understand the impacts to California's investments. On that note, and as Secretary Moss said, but I'll underscore, the 2025 Annual Homeless Assessment Report, or AHAR, was released very abruptly, unexpectedly, but here it is nonetheless. But to put a finer point on some of the percentages, just really a testament to California's progress 2.8% reduction in overall homelessness, a 6.8% reduction in unsheltered homelessness between 2024 and 2025. How it made its way into the report, I couldn't tell you, but HUD itself noted that California had one of the largest decreases and had most significant gains in positive trajectories. So again, we're taking a moment to celebrate. So while these findings are encouraging and directionally consistent with the governor's earlier estimate of approximately 9% reduction, particularly given that we produced that estimate months ahead of HUD producing the AHAR, we're very pleased, and not just with the reductions, but also the consistency with our state data that we have in our Homeless Data Integration System, or HDIS. So the work now is for our data and research teams to do a deeper analysis in terms of that national data compared to our state data and our state investments in individual programs. So while we're seeing meaningful progress, just want to reinforce that we understand that any Californian on the street is one too many, and so while we should celebrate these early successes, we definitely have our work cut out for us on this council. On the note of partnerships, I just also want to give an update on the Governor's Safe Task Force, which is the state action for the facilitation of encampments, and that is specific to state encampments that exist on state right-of-way. Council members may recall that this was a very large task force that was convened, I can't believe it, almost a year ago. We have since taken that work and incorporated it under the umbrella of the council. And so it is Cal ICH, our partners at Caltrans and Cal OES that meet regularly to discuss opportunities for collaboration for encampments that exist on state right-of-way in our largest, most populous cities. So we've taken a special interest and a special eye on large-scale events that exist or are being planned for in our largest cities. And so I think it hasn't started just quite yet, but we're on the cusp of the World Cup efforts in both Los Angeles and in the Bay Area. And so in discussion with our partners at Caltrans, with our partners in San Jose, Oakland, San Francisco, and the city of Los Angeles, determined that the encampments of greatest concern for those communities are not on state right-of-way. And so they are focusing their local resources and efforts to address those encampments that are in closest proximity to those large-scale event sites. Meanwhile, the work never stops at Department of Transportation, and so they will continue to do maintenance and have a very significant role to play in large-scale event operations. But there will not be an announcement of a Safe Task Force effort to address encampments ahead of those two events. So, but as is my commitment to provide you all with these updates on Safe Task Force, I'll just take a pause there. Any questions on SAFE from council members? Seeing none, we'll move on. Also just want to take a moment to acknowledge our HDIS data quality and accountability infrastructure. So while Cal ICH continues to mature as a less than 10-year-old organization, so does HDIS as a less than 6-year-old, massive state collection of homelessness data from our 44 continuums of care. But we're hyper-focused at this stage on technical assistance, transparency, and continuous improvement. We're aware of a handful of continuums of care, some very large, some very small, where there are significant data quality concerns. Our team is reaching out to those continuums of care directly. In some instances, they're being issued a formal letter from myself. We're copying on that letter the council member departments who have financial investments in that community, sort of with the understanding that we want to help those continuums of care along to improve their data quality, to address those issues before it then comes to the attention of the council member funding that entity. So then it becomes an issue of contract management and conversations around, do we ask for some money back because you're not meeting your requirements of HMIS entry and data quality. So just wanted to put that disclaimer out there because there's been quite a bit of engagement between my team, the data research team and HDIS specifically, and with continuums of care. And so if we feel they are not meeting their obligation, or there is not the good faith investment of their attention to whatever the situation happens to be, we will bring it to the attention of our council member directors, department staff, etc. So just wanted to make that flag. All right. So, as we continue to refine and think about data and the things that we make publicly available, and help our state partners, our constituents understand the investments that exist in state government and how that money flows into communities and the outcomes of those dollars. We're continuing our implementation activities related to AB 799, which expands statewide homelessness accountability and reporting requirements. So you all have had probably at this stage 2 to 3 meetings with myself or members of my team. Very much appreciate your all's participation and support there. But where we are now is establishing the reporting structure and inventory existing data sources for the collection of that financial information. So HDIS houses the program outcome, the services outcome. It is not a financial management software system. So, but we remain confident that we will have, bless you, we remain confident that we'll have those dashboards publicly available as is required by statute in June of 2027. Okay, so lastly, but definitely not leastly, we are transitioning, as Secretary mentioned. Included in that transition is the graduation of CalICH from an entity within state government to an independent business unit. And so we're just excited for the opportunity to continue this work. Under the protections of being this grown-up thing now, instead of the entity that's existed since 2018. So, but with that will come new email addresses, new phone numbers, new calendar invitations. So be patient with us while we continue to clean some of those things up. As we move towards fiscal year 26-27, we want to just acknowledge the outgoing members of our Lived Experience Advisory Board. This was the inaugural LEAB, as we refer to it. And so this group of individuals with lived expertise of homelessness across the state, incredibly gracious and patient with myself, with CalICH staff, council member department engagements, and we're very thankful for all that they've helped us build and invest in the space of lived expertise incorporated into our collective work. And we're also very excited to welcome new members of the LEAB. So the council will have that introduction in its September meeting. So very last update is also want to acknowledge and appreciate outgoing advisory committee member Roxanne Wilson, who also who has served as one of the inaugural co-chairs of the CalICH Advisory Committee. Roxanne is currently director of homeless services in Monterey County, where she has spent the entirety of her life. And so it's a community that bore her, raised her, and that she continues to invest in. But she is one of the most genuinely committed, deeply compassionate people I've ever had the experience in working with in my 2 decades in this space. And so just want to say, Roxanne, as we thank you for your time and your service as the one of the inaugural co-chairs for our advisory committee. Thank you so much for your commitment to your community, but also to helping us at the state do what we can to make it easier for you to do the good work that you do. Rounds of applause. And before I officially wrap this item up, I will say we're very excited to welcome as Roxanne's replacement as the COC representative, the county COC representative on the advisory committee. Will be joined now, that her seat will be filled by Jonathan Russell, who is the Housing Homelessness Services Director for Alameda County. So we lose a fantastic partner in Roxanne, but are very excited to gain another in Jonathan. So he will be introduced officially to the council also in September. All right. I'm almost done talking. And Alex, I will pass it off to you and Roxanne just momentarily. But we do have an action item attached to the advisory committee updates that I'll present, and then hopefully we'll take a vote on. And this is a discussion on proposed adoption of months of awareness or observances. And so the purpose of this item and the purpose of this discussion, or this ask rather, of the council is to align public awareness efforts with our California statewide homelessness data, elevating education, disparities, and solutions impacting communities across the state. So it's meant to serve as a engagement framework. It aligns with our action plan. We've identified opportunities. Don't you all worry. There's something for each of you on the months of engagement, and hoping to have your support and communication partnership in lifting these things up and out to the legislature, members of the public. I won't spend too much time on why it matters, but I think we all agree communication and public education is important for a whole host of reasons. But how we'll incorporate these observances into our work is aligning our social media strategies, highlighting our data, not just in HDIS, but in areas where we have data sharing agreements, also incorporating lived expertise and promising practices. So this is an opportunity for us to lift up the good work of your teams, your departments as well. And so I'm not going to go into the how it aligns. I just will hit sort of some of the highlights. If there needs to be discussion, we can certainly do that. But just in the interest of time, we'll hit a few of the more historic communication engagements that we've had with departments. So July would want to recognize that or observe that month as Disability Pride Month. August is not a national observance of back to school, but is historically, traditionally, when students are going back to school, and an opportunity for us to lift up, youth and family homelessness. Moving on down here, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. November is Native American Heritage Month, as well as Homeless Youth Awareness Month. December, two observances, one on a particular day, which is National Homeless Persons Memorial Day. February is Black History Month. And when you see these community callouts, we have data that supports disparities that exist within each one of these communities. And so is an opportunity for us to highlight those things more broadly. Moving on, so June as Elder Abuse Awareness Month, also as Pride Month, as we're currently celebrating. So with that, I'll take a pause. If there needs to be any discussion, conversation, if there's anything immediately that jumps out to the council as a glaring miss on my part, happy to have that conversation now. Otherwise, this is an action item, and so Claire will facilitate public comment and hopefully a motion. But I'll take a pause there. I can always count on Councilmember Lewis to kick us off.
I think this is great. Thank you. Can you go back one? Because September is National Recovery Month. I don't know. Is that there?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yes.
Sorry, just wanted to double check. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember DeMorris.
May is Older Californians and Older Americans Month also.
It is. We saw the proclamation, was it a proclamation? I think it was a proclamation. It was like May 31st or May 27th is when we saw that. So we had some discussion on whether or not that would remain, considering there would be a new administration next May. But I think we decided yes, that it would, so long as somebody the next administration didn't rescind the proclamation.
It's permanent.
Thank you.
Mhm.
That, in shorthand, that's what I meant. Yes, Councilmember Rutledge.
October is National Disability Employment Awareness Month, and I don't think that one got on there.
It did not, but staff will take note of that to make the addition. Thank you. Yes. Yes, and thank you, Councilmember, we're gonna bring a microphone down to you so we can make sure our folks online.
You have it.
Great.
Megan. Oh, I'm over
Yep,
here.
Secretary Sin.
November 11th is Veterans Day.
It is indeed Veterans Day. You know, so yeah. I was so sure, so confident that yes, we got everything here. It is indeed Veterans Day. We will. Yes, yes, we'll add Veterans Day. Yes, Councilmember Lewis.
It may seem a little bit more, but every December 21st, it's National Homeless Persons Memorial Day, and I think it's really important because of the number of people that unfortunately die while living on the street. I think it's an important observation. So maybe want to consider. I knew it was December, but I just looked up the exact date. Is there? Okay, sorry. See, I need glasses.
What I thought you were gonna say was, I'm so impressed that you all included December 21st.
Okay, I am so impressed that you all
Thank you, Councilmember Lewis. So humble that I am. Yes. Yes.
I think also May was declared Mental Health Awareness Month.
We do have Mental Health Awareness Month. Is that May as well? Okay. And some of this was we're, wanting to not overwhelm a particular month with a particular message and to try to focus on categories where we have like either exclusively or collectively publicly available data. We are continuing our work with our colleagues at Health and Human Services, certainly in social services. But if I'm recalling the conversation correctly, it was that we did not have immediately available foster care data as it relates to homelessness, but it is certainly something we'll continue to tease this out as our data sharing agreements get more comprehensive. Yes. Yes. Councilmember Clendenin. Thank you. Is there a state hospital appreciation month that?
Oh, don't we wish? How about June is Trauma Awareness Month?
Okay. Yes, we can absolutely add that. And I did, and again, I thought I was so impressed with myself. Staff had a much longer presentation that got pared down, but May is also Missing and Murdered Indigenous Persons Month. And so we will want to acknowledge that as well.
Thank you for this. And at the California Department of Education, we can definitely support with this campaign. We do a lot of awareness. I do want to call out that September is also National Deaf Awareness Month. And so we do a lot of work with our 3 state special schools. So maybe we can put that in for that. And then you guys have November up there, which is great. There was one other thing too. November is also our Native American month as well. So we do some work around that too. So
we have that at the top, Native American Heritage Month, but we'll add, and I'm sorry, did you say Deaf Awareness Month September?
Yes,
yes,
correct.
Okay, thank you. Director Vasquez?
April is Fair Housing Month, and protected trades, both federal law and state law, they're protected persons with disabilities. In the state of California, we enjoy protections like veterans. And so I think that's an important.
That's an important one for sure. Yes.
In addition to Pride Month in June, we might also consider Transgender Day of Remembrance in November.
Yes. Thank you. Which again, on the short list. Thank you, staff. A testament to your thorough, comprehensive approach in my attempt at time management. Secretary Moss, did you have something? Okay, great. All right. We will, pending those additions, inclusions, and just as a reminder, the ask is that you all as a council adopt these as well as those that were discussed onto our council-wide engagement calendar, which means that come April, Director Velasquez, we're gonna want to have some HCD collaboration on comms. So with that, I will pass it to Claire to facilitate any public comment and walk us through a potential motion.
All right, since this is an action item that will result in a vote, we will now open it up for public comment. Please keep comments to this agenda item only. If your comment is not related to the months of awareness, there will be time for general public comment at the end of this meeting. If you are connected through Zoom, please select the raised hand icon. For those joining us by phone, please press *9 to indicate that you would like to comment. You'll be instructed to unmute yourself and you will have 2 minutes to make your comment. If you are joining in person, please raise your hand if you have a comment. Are there any public comments for adoption of the months of awareness in the room first? No raised hands. We will go online. I see one raised hand. All right, Robert.
Yeah, I
You have
also
2
want to,
minutes.
yeah, I won't take that long. May is also Hispanic Awareness Month, and that's not on there. That's it.
All right. Thank you. Okay, I see no other hands raised. Would anyone like to motion to adopt? Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Great, thank you, both of you. All right, so we will now take a vote. As a reminder, only in-person council members may vote. If you are a designee, please refrain from voting. We will vote through raised hands and only count those in the room. The categories will be as follows: yes, no, and abstain. And I might ask you to hold your hand up for just a moment so we can capture the vote. Those voting yes, please raise your hand. Okay. Wonderful, thank you. I don't believe we have any remaining council members, but anybody voting no? And anybody abstaining? Okay, great. The motion passes. Thank you very much.
As soon as I have that procurement authority on July 1, I'm going to invest in microphones, not these little doodads. But with that, we will move on to the co-chair portion of this agenda item, advisory committee updates, and I will pass it to Alex and for the final time, Roxanne.
Good afternoon, council members. Alex Visotsky from National Alliance to End Homelessness, co-chair of the advisory committee. I'll share a little bit about our most recent advisory council meeting from May before I pass the baton to Roxanne. Unfortunately, you'll be stuck with me a little bit longer. So even as you lose Roxanne, I'll continue to be a thorn in your side. But we met as the advisory council May the 6th. And as you just learned, we looked at this calendar for months of awareness, which led to some really rich engagement on how to use this as an opportunity to just raise understanding about the multifaceted nature of homelessness and dispel some of the myths that I think we all spend a lot of time combating. We also had a presentation on bills that are working their way through the legislature related to homelessness. We've seen a lot of vibrant conversation in the legislature on homelessness, some of it generating really great, exciting new ideas. Some of the conversation in the legislature has perhaps highlighted a need for folks on this body to bring their tremendous expertise about homelessness and housing to bring some of that expertise to our legislative partners to ensure they have an understanding of the full breadth of the work happening within the state. So that was a rich conversation as well. We also talked at the advisory council about the kind of peculiarity of the moment we're in, of just holding both the success of what we've seen over the last couple years and just the unprecedented precariousness of keeping that success. Secretary Moss highlighted some of those HDIS outcomes, 110,000 permanent housing placements through HAP from 2023 to 2025. Really strong progress on youth homelessness through HAP. And without a doubt, that's played a role in California turning this corner and seeing declines in homelessness, even in a moment where housing costs and affordability that drive homelessness are continuing to drive inflow at unprecedented rates. Um, so that's real progress that I think we should be celebrating. We should be taking a moment to recognize. And I think we were reminded a little bit on Monday with the release of the FY26 HUD COC NOFO of just how fragile that progress is. And we're continuing to digest the policy impacts of that over at the Alliance, so I won't go into the weeds of that today. But as we consider the fragility of that progress, I'd say the advisory committee was pretty united in wanting to urge you all to make sure we're making the investments to sustain that progress. And as the administration starts to wrap up its time, ensure that we're leaving a legacy of getting California on track to end homelessness. That legacy, I firmly believe, is possible and is real. Um, and I think we're concerned that not only the federal headwinds, but also some of what we've seen from, for example, from the May revised proposal, which we saw a few weeks ago, threaten to jeopardize some of that progress, right? We did not see new additional funding for the HAP program beyond what was agreed to last year. We've seen proposals to change CalAIM's community supports and change the eligibility and criteria around tenancy sustaining services, right? That will threaten that progress and the real utility of that benefit to keeping people housed in supportive housing. Real concerns here that could not only reduce the number of people we're able to move back into homelessness, but threaten our ability to continue to keep folks housed that are frankly still finding that stability, still finding that ability to thrive in housing. So while we are, I think, really right to trumpet these accomplishments and recognize what has worked well, we need to keep doing what led to the accomplishments, right? And not take our foot off the gas and give that progress away. So that's the thought I will leave you with, and I'll hand it over to my fellow co-chair, who continues to be somebody that even beyond, I'm sure, us partnering together on this advisory council, will continue to be somebody that illuminates and enlightens things for me and is a teacher for me. So, and is always a joy to work with. So I'll hand it over to you, Roxanne.
Thank you so much, Alex. Since Alex did an incredible job really talking about the last advisory committee, which unfortunately I missed half of, I do want to use this space to just really share my gratitude for the opportunity to be in proximity with state decision makers. I know that sometimes my compassion and my advocacy, it comes off in ways that can sometimes be a little off-putting, but really that is informed by my own personal lived experience with homelessness, the fact that I am a Pacific Islander and my people are highly impacted by homelessness, and also because of my very long commitment to serving people in our community so that everybody is thriving. But I will say this, I am incredibly comforted in the fact that you all share the same exact values that I do. Your jobs are not easy. You have people like me from all over the place telling you what you should do and how you could do it better. And I know it's not easy to navigate those conversations, especially when sometimes it's not your decision to move in a certain direction, but you do have to do it. But again, thank you again for everything that you're doing with BHSA, with CalAIM, with just, I could keep going, the home keys, every single thing that you have done the past 10 years, starting off with really HEAP, and and taking such a strong position to support local communities in addressing homelessness and teaching us how to work better together. I think that the model that you've created in this space with so many agencies and departments of the state working together really does reflect your commitment, and it does show us what we need to be doing locally. So to that end, we do have an MC-ICH, not quite as formal as Cal-ICH, but in those spaces, incredible things do happen. So again, thank you for this opportunity. And it is absolutely not going to be the last time you hear from me. Congratulations to Jonathan Russell, another human being who I think is a phenomenal leader in addressing homelessness, and also to my advisory committee members, my co-chair, Alex Visotsky, who is so humble, but really the roles are reversed. I learned a lot from him. And also to the people who we serve for their patience in as they wait for us to get our stuff together. Thanks.
Thank you, advisory committee co-chairs. Very well said. I will say we do not yet have our lived experience advisory board supports with us for their portion of the agenda, but on the note of Roxanne sharing her lived experience, it was not until I heard Roxanne share her lived experience that I felt it so impactful that I too should share my lived experience. And so I credit her for as long as I've been in the space of housing, homelessness, and public health. Didn't feel like I wanted to take up space with my own experience, but it was hearing Roxanne talk about hers that really inspired me. So for all the things I can thank you for, Roxanne Wilson, thank you for that. And I will move on before I cry. All right, so this is the bulk of our agenda is going to be on council member department updates, specifically for youth homelessness. Cal-ICH staff will gently alert me should our lived experience advisory board members join us, and we can incorporate them towards the end of the agenda. But for the interest of time, we'll proceed. They cannot join, so we will proceed. Great. All right. So this item is focused on youth homelessness, including a council member discussion on department investments. We'll hear from some cross-system partners from their perspectives and a subsequent discussion. But before we begin, just want to acknowledge that today's discussion is not intended to be a deep dive into data systems, any individual programs. Programs will be highlighted by department directors, but not meant to be a AB 977 discussion. But depending on the data set, we may see different stories emerge. So for example, our HDIS shows an increase in the number of youth accessing homeless services over time, while our point in time counts show decreases. So those trends are not necessarily mutually exclusive or contradictory. They might reflect improved identification of young populations experiencing homelessness in communities, increased service engagement, changing methodologies, or real progress in reducing homelessness among youth. But what is clear is that no single data source fully captures the experience of youth homelessness, and no data set changes the reality that any young person experiencing homelessness is one too many. So young people experiencing homelessness face heightened risk of victimization, trafficking, exploitation, substance use, educational disruption, and long-term housing instability. So today's discussion is intended to help the council better understand how California has evolved its response to youth homelessness over time, what we're learning from our partners and young people themselves, and where we still have opportunities for improvement. At the federal level, and this is not meant to be a history lesson by any means, but just I think it's important to sort of set the foundation for what's existed in federal policy and in state policy and opportunities moving forward. But at the federal level, youth homelessness has been recognized in law for decades, beginning with the Runaway and Homeless Youth Act in 1974, which remains the primary federal law dedicated to housing and supportive services for unaccompanied youth. And then, of course, we have in 1987, the McKinney-Vento Act creating important education protections for students experiencing homelessness. And over time, funding made available specifically for youth experiencing homelessness has been centralized in the Continuum of Care program at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. So the key point here really is that while these laws have been reauthorized and updated over time, many of the foundational statutes are 5 decades old. The experience of young people in the world and in this country has changed dramatically since then. Housing costs, technology, behavioral health needs, LGBTQ plus youth visibility, foster care, and justice transitions and data systems have all evolved. And that has really lent itself to a definition challenge. Young person may be considered homeless in one system, but not another. For example, a young person couch surfing might be identified by their school as experiencing homelessness, but not counted in a point in time count or in our statewide HDIS if they're not connected to homeless services. And so the question really isn't whether a person is experiencing homelessness or housing instability, but really which system recognizes that experience and who is responsible for responding to it. All right, California's dedicated focus on youth homelessness is still relatively new. While youth experiencing homelessness have long been served through our partners in child welfare, certainly education, behavioral health, and justice systems, California did not establish a youth-specific homelessness framework until the enactment of SB 918 or the California Youth Homelessness Act in 2018. So that legislation formally recognized youth homelessness as a distinct policy issue, establishing, requiring us to establish statewide goals, directing our council departments and agencies to improve coordination and identify strategies to prevent and end youth homelessness specifically. Want to just note here, anytime to celebrate California and our awesomeness, but we're not alone, but we are among a very small group of states that have created a dedicated framework focused on youth homelessness. So we are participating. I personally participate on a multi-state working group with a small group of states who are focused and dedicating resources and at the leadership level to address youth homelessness. So Washington's Office of Youth Homelessness, who sort of kicked off this multi-state effort, was established in 2015. They're often credited as being the national model for such infrastructure, but again, our state legislation passed in 2018. So I think that context is important because meaningful progress requires more than good intentions or an occasional agenda item. It's really the authority, the accountability, coordination, and as we heard from our advisory committee members, and we'll hear from others today, requires sustained investment, whether that's financial or capacity. Before I move on, so sorry. When we discuss youth homelessness today, I just, again, want to set the stage. We're discussing policy framework that's less than a decade old. The question, again, isn't whether we've solved youth homelessness in 8 years. It's what have we learned? What have we developed? What tools have we put in our toolbox since then? And opportunities for moving forward. So our collective challenge is ensuring that young people are connected to safety, stability, and opportunity before they become vulnerable to exploitation, trafficking, substance use, educational disruption, or chronic homelessness. So with that framing, we'll begin hearing first from our council member departments with investments in programs that are youth set aside specifically. Then we'll hear from council members and state partners generally. And we're very excited to have some special guests with us here today to hear from cross-system partner perspective. So with that, I will turn it over to Director Velasquez to kick us off. You can use this fun one.
Take another one. Okay, this is working. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I will provide everyone an overview of the not just investments, sort of the support system that we have been gradually building at the State Housing Department to support through three main programs youth homelessness. But let me just start by sharing with all of you that one of the most gratifying, energizing, inspiring moments in my time as director of HCD has been to attend housing grand openings for projects where you are welcoming, especially foster youth that ended up aging out of the system and they need a place to live. And we have made available financing to create new housing for these youth. The streets we know because we're part of this council and we're passionate about this, where the streets are no place for anyone to live in, but especially for very young unaccompanied persons like an 18, 19, 20-year-old. And as Director Marshall mentioned in her opening, we know that these young persons are subject more than anybody else to potential victimization and exploitation. So again, it's been so gratifying. I was actually at one of these grand openings not long ago in LA, where we opened nearly 50 new homes for very, very young people that were aging out of the foster care. So it's very inspiring to be in places that are very supportive of everything housing, but the services that these individuals need. So we have three programs. I'm just gonna give an overview of them at HCD. HAP, you're all familiar with HAP, providing flexible regional homelessness funding to local governments and COCs. HAP has a set aside requirement of 10%. It's a minimum set aside for youth. Similarly, our Home Key program, that is a competitive program to rapidly expand the state's inventory of interim and permanent housing, includes an 8% youth set aside to create this safe, affordable housing with supportive services. This is the grand opening I attended recently, a Home Key project in Los Angeles. Again, 8% youth set aside. And then we have TAY, which provides grants to county child welfare agencies to support things like housing navigation, transitional housing, rental assistance for youth ages 18 and 24. A couple things are very important in all of these programs. Technical assistance for Home Key grantees and the last iteration under Proposition 1 Home Key Plus, we provide direct support to help project sponsors navigate the development process, which is complex in and of itself. But for youth serving projects, we want to make sure that these projects move quickly from the pre-development to the development, construction, and completion stages. For HAP, we also provide direct technical assistance to grantees who need support spending down their youth set-aside allocations so it can help meet the housing need of young people in specific communities. And collaboration, right? The whole premise of this council is to make sure that in situations like this, we are coordinating as we do with ICH staff, with DHCS, with the Department of Social Services, to make it easier for grantees to use HAP alongside other programs, ensuring coordination so that the young people that will be the beneficiaries of these programs can get the full range of the support that they need. We have, these are slides that go a little deeper into each of the three programs, but TAY includes, it's basically like a program that includes three elements: the transitional housing program, the housing navigation and maintenance program, and the Transitional Housing Plus Supplemental Program. Together, we've invested $56 million to support young people directly. And I'm going to talk about a little bit of the milestones and data that demonstrates how we are doing everything we can to serve amongst all of the young people in need, the ones that are most vulnerable, that need the support the most. So under TAY, we've served nearly 16,000 participants between 2020 and 2024. Some numbers to give you a sense of this outreach to the hard to serve population. 13,000, so the vast majority, came from the foster care system, a population that we know faces acute housing vulnerability as these young persons age out. We also know that 3,500 of these participants were actually living on the streets, which is extremely important to know how many of them were unhoused young persons. Nearly 2,000 identified themselves as LGBTQ+. 5,400 were enrolled in a school. So just to give you a sense, happy serving a great percentage of these young persons that are actually enrolled in a school, ensuring that they have stable housing opportunities during these formative years. HomeKey, moving to the next program, HomeKey has created under this youth set aside more than 1,000 homes for these young individuals between rounds 2, 3, and the current iteration, which is HomeKey Plus. Of those, nearly 900 units are built and operating across 31 projects. Again, I've attended at least 3 or 4 of these grand openings. 12 of those projects are 100% restricted for transitional age youth. And under HAP, that set aside, the number of unaccompanied young adults ages 18-24 that have been served in the different rounds of HAP that we've administered is 38,000. 38,000 young adults. These are young people who, again, were sleeping outside in shelters or in unsafe situations and who received targeted resources to help stabilize their lives. 38,000, which I mean, it's the number is growing. We want to. I don't know if I should say we want to see that or not, but we want to make sure that we that certainly the grantees, continuums of cares counties are targeting that set aside and serving specifically young adults. So that's a quick overview of the programs serving youth homelessness in the HCD infrastructure.
Thank you for that overview, Director Velasquez. If you can pass the mic on down to your colleague, we'll have Councilmember Troya.
Thank you so much. I think that was actually a very good segue, since the programs that I will be focusing on are specific to foster youth, both current and former foster youth. At CDSS, we are responsible for supervision of the foster care system overall, and ultimately for overseeing the safety, well-being, and permanent connection to family for young people who are removed from their families and grow up in the foster care system, hopefully being reunified with their families or with kin, but in some instances aging out of our system. We have extended foster care in California from the ages of 18 to 21, where you can still receive foster care supports while you are transitioning to adulthood, and young people can come in and out of the system at those ages. But at the age of 21, the foster care support does end. That said, these housing and support programs do not necessarily end then. So I will walk through the examples of our transitional housing placement programs in particular, and there are 2 underneath that. So the first is the THPP NMD, which non-minor dependent, which is that 18 to 21-year-old in foster care program. This one, we license these programs through our community care licensing division. They're subject to the health and safety regulations under Title 22 of that licensing code. It serves specifically non-minors who are in extended foster care. There's no time limit, but again, as I referenced, extended foster care does end at the age of 21. Once a provider is certified and licensed, they are provided a foster care payment rate that's based on the AFDC, the Aid to Families with Dependent Children foster care payment rate, and their county's fair market rent supplement. The second program is the Transitional Housing Program Plus. THP Plus is how we often abbreviate that. This program offers both housing and pretty extensive supportive services for up to 36 months for young people up to age 25. So that can happen even after you've aged out of foster care. To be eligible for THP Plus, though, a former non-minor dependent must have exited foster care on or after the age of 18. The housing options are pretty vast. So it can be apartments, single family dwellings. It could be a dorm in a college. It could be a condo. It can be a host family model. So a lot of options for what this can look like. The counties have a tremendous amount of control over the implementation of these programs. They were realigned as a part of the state realignment funding in 2011-12. And so the funding is part of each county's local revenue fund. So we don't really have direct program oversight of the programs in the way that we did prior to that realignment, but we do still offer pretty significant technical assistance to counties. And the counties are still responsible for certifying that the program's needed, certifying that the provider is capable of operating the program and meeting the needs of the population. These programs are not licensed by community care licensing, but the county has to ensure the appropriate certification and at least fire clearances for those programs. So we have 46 counties operating THP programs in their jurisdictions. Something we're excited about coming up is that we are implementing a new tiered rate structure that completely reforms the way that foster care rates work. So they are no longer placement based. They are instead going to be based on the needs of the young person. And one of the innovations in that is going to also be funding for what we've called immediate needs. So where we've identified that the young person has needs, they will be able to receive this source of funding that is built on a program, which this will be a good segue if DHCS is next, of high fidelity wraparound. And this implementation of the immediate needs program also offers an opportunity for us to offer high fidelity wraparound as a service to ensure that young non-minor dependents also have access to that intensive and coordinated support. So we're looking forward to being able to integrate that along with our housing and support programs. So we actively collaborate with all of our partners at the counties, education systems, our housing and community development partners, as you heard, and DHCS on things like those immediate need programs and many other supports and services. And we're really appreciative of the ways that all of those folks and those with lived expertise and the advocates help us to make these programs as successful as possible for these young people who are aging out of foster care.
Thank you for that, Director Troya. Just a quick question. So there's fewer counties that are enrolled than there are counties. Could you speak to why?
Yeah, the program is realigned, and it's really ultimately up to the counties as to whether they participate or don't participate in it. So there is, I think it's a question more for them.
Right.
But most of the larger counties do participate, but we do have some that don't. And they ultimately, if the young person is in foster care between the ages of 18 and 21, are still responsible for their well-being and their safety. And that includes their case plan, that includes an aspect of how they are housed, and offering them a meaningful option for that. But for those who are 21 to 25 who would be served in THP Plus, that legal obligation doesn't exist. So ideally, they're helping to meet their needs and helping to support them as they age out in other ways, but they may not all have a THP Plus set of programs.
I think the really important clarification. I mean, oftentimes, and can't fault folks for being confused by state structure and relationship and what we delegate to counties to do and perform on our behalf. But it's a very similar conversation with programs like HAP, with encampment resolution. The state's not doing A, B, and C, when in fact sometimes it is discretion of local partners to participate. So appreciate that. DHCS is not next, but if CalOES does not mind, it can be, because I think continuity in that area perhaps is helpful just for the discussion. So, and there's wonderful. There we go. Wasn't too far ahead. So with that,
great. Thank
Director
you.
Moss.
So for the Department of Healthcare Services,
We really have focused on kind of enhanced care management, which we launched with CalAIM and the community supports services as well. And then just kind of as the highlight here, also just the Behavioral Health Services Act implementation that goes live in July, which includes 30% of those local BHSA dollars directed towards housing interventions. Maybe move to the next slide, we can go into the details. So enhanced care management, this is really for our most individuals with our most complex behavioral health and physical health conditions, really kind of like a quarterback for their care. And it's really thinking about the whole person navigating the multiple systems that an individual may need to navigate to get the care they needed. And we have what we call populations of focus for enhanced care management. And the two that are most relevant to this conversation are those related to individuals or families or unaccompanied children and youth experiencing homelessness, and then also individuals with significant behavioral health needs. And again, this is a managed care benefit. So this is available to anybody who qualifies, meets the medical criteria for these services. And this is really, again, operated through our managed care plan. So it's not an award, it's a benefit under the Medi-Cal program. It is available statewide. Maybe moving on to community supports. Community supports are also something that we implemented a few years ago. These are really the social drivers, the things that really determine really improvements to health outcomes, but are not necessarily health or clinical services. This includes in this space 4 services related to housing transition navigation services, housing deposits, housing tenancy and sustaining services. And then January of this year, we implemented transitional rent for the behavioral health population of focus. So these again are services provided by our Medi-Cal managed care plans. Community supports aren't necessarily available statewide. These are implemented at a managed care plans option, but pretty much all of our managed care plans have implemented these, and the transitional rent is actually mandatory for our managed care plan. So that is the only community support that is a mandatory benefit for our managed care plans. And so these went live, except for the behavioral health transitional rent, back in 2024. And so a few years of experience in this space, and also really showing some great outcomes related to cost effectiveness of these services. We've demonstrated to CMS that really the investment in these services has reduced inpatient costs, has reduced ER costs, has reduced cost in long-term care facilities like our skilled nursing facilities. So just really good data out there in building the case for these health-related social needs services. And then moving on, we post data on both ECM and community supports on a quarterly basis, just recognizing kind of the utilization over the quarters. And then finally, I will just mention the Behavioral Health Services Act. As you all know, 30% of the local dollars are directed towards housing interventions at the local level. As Brian mentioned earlier, the county integrated plans required under BHSA are the final versions are due to the state at the end of June. In each of these documents, you can see how counties plan to use the 30% of those housing intervention dollars. We will be posting the public version or the kind of the final versions of these integrated plans later this summer, so available to the public, and each county will also be posting their plans. But that will give a sense for how counties plan to use some of these dollars for the different populations in their communities. The final thing that I'll mention that we didn't do a slide on, but given the conversation on foster youth, over the last few years, the department has done some significant work related to evidence-based practices for our foster youth with our BH Connect waiver that the CMS approved a year ago. Really some new kind of packages of evidence-based practices for our foster youth, and in conjunction with the high fidelity wrap that Director Troy just mentioned as well. Also including activity stipends that are going live for our foster youth, really thinking about how do we support kind of from an upfront prevention approach for whether it's music lessons, sports, really how do we support our foster youth in thriving, and then also adding at our Medi-Cal managed care plans, foster care liaison. So a really a one point of contact for our county child welfare agencies to really help triage Medi-Cal questions, managed care questions to ensure that our foster youth get the services they need.
Thank you for that, Dr. Boss. I will, another finer point, I think, on why we decided to include available to and award type in these slide structures was just to highlight that while we have one-time investments in programs like HAP and ERF, we have ongoing and historic entitlement programs and benefits that are available to those who are eligible. So, and those, of course, exist mostly in our Health and Human Services side of Cal ICH's co-chair model. So appreciate that overview. All right, I'm going to skip back in time to our partners at Cal OES. And, you know, again, just emphasizing that we have our entitlement benefits that exist within Medi-Cal and child welfare systems, but we also have Cal OES who sort of quieter competitive grants that have existed or continue to exist in the space of emergency youth services. And so I'll pass it to you, Ricky, for this comprehensive I think you have the longest slide deck, so we'll pass it to you.
Wow. Okay. Might have the longest, but I might be the shortest. So hi, thank you. Ricky Hammond, Assistant Director for Grants Management at Cal OES, and for Director Thomas Jacobs. And yes, so we provide information to Cal ICH on a few of our programs. And while we have over 70 programs that provide services to victims of crime, for this council, we focus on a few that include housing assistance, addressing, trying to prevent homelessness. And so we have 3 programs that specifically focus on youth homelessness, and we have administered over $86 million since the beginning of these programs. So for the Homeless Youth and Exploitation Program, that started in 2011, and we've administered $16.5 million. And then we have 2 kind of sister programs, the Homeless Youth Emergency Services Pilot Program and the Homeless Youth Emergency Services and Housing Program, which began in 2016. And we've administered $70 million for those programs. And sorry, Megan, I'm probably jumping around, but back to the first slide. So the milestone for all of these programs, this is kind of a snapshot for a year. And these programs have provided almost 6,000 shelter nights or housing. And then these programs focus on housing options and supportive services to youth, including long-term stabilization. And the support we provide is each subrecipient has a grant analyst that works with them on their project and provides technical assistance. And a requirement of these programs is that subrecipients are required to provide referrals for basic healthcare needs and linkages to public and private agencies. And they participate in the local continuum of care and data reporting to the local HMIS, Homeless Management Information System. And then I can just provide some more details on the program. So for the Homeless Youth and Exploitation Program, this program provides comprehensive services to help homeless youth exit street life, and with the focus on providing specialized services for youth experiencing sexual exploitation. And then you can kind of see what type of grant it is, who's it's available to. These are available to 4 nonprofit organizations, and Cal OES collects quarterly reports. And then also there is, like I had indicated, information is shared in the Homeless Management Information System, HMIS. And then moving on to the next program. So there's the Homeless Youth Emergency Services and Housing Program, and this funds 12 nonprofit organizations and provides food, shelter, counseling, outreach services to local homeless youth and links them to certain services, screening for basic health needs, long-term stabilization. And then again, we collect quarterly reports similar to the previous program. And then the last program here is the Homeless Youth Emergency Services Pilot Program. And this program expands funding for crisis intervention and stabilization services to homeless youth so the immediate crisis can be resolved. These fund for nonprofit organizations. And again, we collect quarterly reports for these. And we collect this data and while I only shared, a little bit of information on housing, we have information on how many meals are provided, types of independent living skills, and then crisis intervention. And we do report a lot of our information out on our website for these programs. So we'll have an updated report out soon for that. And those are the programs from Cal OES.
Thank you, Ricky. These are to nonprofit organizations. Is there any requirement in the applications for folks to get a letter of support from their continuum of care or from their city county partners?
That I don't have that information handy. I can look at it while we're talking, but I'm not quite sure. In some of these, since that might have been a requirement when the first grant cycle happened, because one program goes out, one of these two go out competitively. But I can get that information to you.
Yeah, and for these specifically, it'd be helpful to know, but just for the benefit of the council, questions we're not short on questions these days of fraud, contract management, and how our state dollars are working in conjunction, coordination with local programs. And speaking as somebody who served the majority of my time in local government, sometimes you're surprised at who has gotten money from, whether it's a federal grant or a state grant. And so thinking about our next year's recommendations to the council, to the legislature, making those incorporations standard. We have all agreed housing first language is incorporated in contracts and our NOFAs and things like that. Could we consider as a council, as a state, to do a similar requirement for your local partners? So thank you for that. All right, I do believe there we are. We're going to move on now to Department of Education with William McGee, who, just for the good of the group, has officially rejoined the council. Superintendent Thurmond has, who is an independent elected, can designate. And so he has chosen to designate William as his official replacement on the council. But always happy to have you, sir.
Thank you very much. And it's good to be here again with everyone. So as Megan stated, my name is William McGee. I'm Deputy Superintendent at the California Department of Education. And our team focuses on supports for children who are experiencing housing transition. And so as you'll see, the Education for Homelessness and Children and Youth is authorized under Federal Title VII, Part B, which is of the McKinney-Vento Act. And it includes a requirement that every local educational agency or school district must designate a homeless education liaison. And so I was asking the team about, with the homeless liaisons, have our numbers increased or decreased? And they actually have increased, which is great, because now we're being able to identify children who are in need and provide additional services. The liaisons play a vital role in the identification and support of students experiencing homelessness, which enables them to fully participate and succeed in the educational setting. And then more information about the homeless education liaisons can be found on a guide to the homeless liaison role in California. It's very great and important, and I believe that we can make connections between all of our agencies because we have children who are really affected by this. On the next slide, what you'll see is just information about what the homeless education liaisons do and the requirements of the McKinney-Vento Act. And then many of the Cal ICH action plan goals are aligned to the work of our liaisons. So supporting youth with their transition into higher education, ensuring that student voices are present when working within the groups and other bodies to provide recommendations and perspectives, and then identifying the needs of students experiencing homelessness as a result of natural disasters and things of that nature. We know fires are prevalent, and so our liaisons are very active when those type of things happen. The metrics for our school district includes this California School Dashboard, which displays the performance of the LEA schools and student groups on a set of state and local measures. And one of the things I asked the team about was, what are our numbers, and can you break it down by grade level, by county, by ethnicity? And so all that information can be found on the dashboard, and we'll definitely send that to Megan and the team to make sure you guys have it. The team was very responsive and they got this information quickly, and I was able to look through it. And so you should find some great value to that. Reporting requirements include the Federal Consolidated State Performance Report. We call it the CSPR, which is a requirement that's required by the Department of Education, and it collects data on the McKinney-Vento Act. The data is used to identify technical assistance needs and program management and policy needs. We also have something called CARS, the Consolidated Application and Reporting System, and it's used to electronically apply for, manage, report, and provide assurances that the school district will comply with the legal requirements of the McKinney-Vento Act. And our Department of Education team monitors the implementation of the McKinney-Vento Act and really provides technical assistance to our homeless liaisons and the school districts. And then as we're finishing up, I've mentioned before when I was on the council previously that we have a statewide conference that our team coordinates, and I believe this was the third one. And it's increased where there's over 600 attendees who have been participating. And we would really love to extend the partnership, figure out how we can get you all down to this conference, because there's our school districts who are there. We also have people who are presenting best practices and things. There, in the May revise, there's $1 billion for the community schools, which is great. As a former principal, we were a pilot program for a community school at my school site. And when we were able to bring the resources to the school that supported not only children in housing transition, but all of our children, we saw a great increase in academics as well as their families. And so community schools is something that is very important. And again, I would say we can all look at how to tap into. And the last few things that I would say is that our liaisons identify and serve students that many times are not recognized by other agencies. I think, Megan, you were mentioning that earlier. And so it's something that's very great because, again, the example of couch surfing or not qualifying for other services, our liaisons are able to provide that support. And the last thing I'll say is that our team definitely does collaborate. We would definitely love to be in stronger contact with HHS and the RIA staff too. So let's make sure we can get that together too as we're presenting. And then I think I keep saying the last thing, this is the official last thing. It's great to see that in the council minutes, you guys were still talking about data. I remember that was something we were really emphasizing when I was on the council previous. And as I was able to look at the minutes, see you guys are still talking about data. So that's very great and looking forward to continue digging in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember McGee, and thank you for reviewing minutes from the meeting. We appreciate that attention to detail. But before we move on to this next portion, which these were official statutory obligations or program-specific set-asides, but certainly all of our council members and their respective staff have an interest, a vested interest in youth populations, addressing youth homelessness. So we're going to open it up now to a rapid fire sort of roundtable from the balance of our council member departments who maybe it's not youth homelessness specifically, but you have employment activities, or you're doing dedicated outreach. Caltrans, I think, will speak a little bit around their targeted employment programs within their districts, where they're having hiring and retention complications. And these are entry-level positions that are you would typically see young people interested in accepting of. So with that, we will, as I said, do a rapid fire. If you don't have anything to contribute on the space of youth, please don't feel compelled. We're pressed on time anyhow. But with that, Byron Lim, I will pass it to you to kick Caltrans off.
Thank you. So for Caltrans, we don't have a program specific targeting youth employment. However, we do have several programs like the painter apprenticeship program. These are crews that paint the Bay Bridge, the steel structures. So that's a 2-year program that folks can apply for. And then once they go through that program, then they become a journeyman painter. So it provides that stability and opportunity for that. The other one that we have is student assistant programs that we bring on youth onto our projects in Caltrans to do that. And of course, summer internship programs. We are going to start kicking off a career fair that are happening. And as you mentioned, Megan, the difficulty with us is retention in our crews, and we're working on that. So that's the brief high-level update that I can.
Thank you, Byron. And benefit of many benefits to Caltrans, one of which is there's 12 districts up and down the state, and so targeting can look very specific to a community. So Cal ICH looks forward to continuing working with our partners at Caltrans, identify those kinds of opportunities. Do we do a career fair with a continuum of care? Do we do that with our youth shelter or youth housing programs? So I appreciate that. Secretary Sin, you were otherwise engaged for your briefing, but we had a great conversation with your team about veterans who are still within that youth category, but also a really great discussion on and I'm going to say survivor benefits, but that is not what that is. Is that what maybe that is? Okay.
Dependent benefits, yeah.
Dependent benefits. Yes, please.
Thanks, Megan. Well, first I want to start with, I would say the issue of the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs and VA funding and supporting dependent children or families in a lot of ways is a relatively new concept. So in the last 15 years or so, at least the time that I've been doing, nearly 20 years, kind of advocacy for veterans, what we've really started to see within the federal government is an increase in kind of adding programs that really address the needs of families, including often dependent children. But that's still a relatively new concept. So the overarching program that really addresses preventative homelessness among families with a veteran in their family is the supportive services for veterans and their families. And that is typically a granted, community granted program that the VA administers that allows people to get rental assistance, utility assistance, et cetera, up to so many times or so many months throughout a year in a 12-month period. And that's a great program, but that is a federal program. And it is something that we work with our community partners on. But what that really means is states, and oftentimes California, have had to look at the issue of homelessness within a veteran family and figure out a solution ourselves, or kind of bring awareness to the federal government and to the state about this specific issue. Because what we do know is that hidden homelessness among veterans with dependents, with minor dependents, is a real issue. And while we see a kind of an average profile of a person experiencing homelessness who's a veteran, typically tends to be a man, maybe a Vietnam era or previous era male. When you look at who among veterans is has minor dependents in their care and is experiencing homelessness, it's usually a woman who served in the military. Or you see a couple who might be in charge of a dependent child who may have a disability and they're caring for their dependent child. So there are a lot of nuances among homelessness with this population. So SSVF is critical. Some of the housing programs that we have, obviously with our Veterans Housing and Homelessness Prevention Program that was started a decade ago, $600 million allocation that we've worked in partnership with Housing Community Development Department. One thing we prioritized throughout the rounds of funding with that program was housing for families and looking at 2 to 3 bedroom units and how we could kind of prioritize and really incentivize the grantees to create family housing. That's critical. So outside of the housing space, though, one thing that we think is really critical in the discussion that my team had with Megan and her team was a really great benefit here in California is the dependent fee waiver. That is a dependent of a disabled veteran, so a college-age youth whose parent is a 0% or more service-connected disabled veteran, which 0% may sound counterintuitive, but a veteran can be service-connected from in increments of 10% from 0 to 100%. And then there are some considerations for employability as well within that disability rating awarded by the VA. 0% or more can actually result in a college-bound child of a veteran getting their tuition covered at any public institution in California. So that's a community college, a UC, or a CSU. So some numbers. In fiscal year 24-25, more than 22,700 veteran dependents attended California colleges and universities using our CalVet fee waiver system. So that was 11,765 students attending a CSU, 5,733 students attending community colleges, and 5,244 students attending UCs. And that was an increase of about 17% over the last 4 years. So this is an ever-expanding benefit that we hope continues and we want to see continue. It's a great collaboration with our public institutions. But as we know, homelessness is an experience, unfortunately, that is often the outcome of many different symptoms of an issue, including a lack of education, including lack of pathways to get viable employment, viable education, as well as debt. And that could include college debt. So we think this is a great way for our veteran students and their families, or dependent students and their families of veterans, to be able to continue and be prosperous and thus, kind of protect against something like experiencing homelessness. So it's a really great program.
Yeah, that's great. And I've, been in service for I think I'm at 21 years now. I had no idea. And so like field social worker had no idea like these sorts of things existed. Every county, I think I'm right, every county has to have a veteran service officer. And sometimes they're very deeply connected to the folks doing housing and homelessness programs. If they're an integrated county structure, that's certainly the case. But not always, unfortunately. And so the Safe Task Force, interestingly enough, taught us quite a bit, doing some targeting in communities where we knew there was active bases or, a significant veteran population, and had some great success in CalVet supporting resource fairs, one in particular in San Diego, where, a young person exactly in that case who was, compounding debt, tremendous debt to get their education, was actively experiencing homelessness, would never have known that these things existed had it not been for that connection. So as we think about dollars into communities that create a bed or a unit, we are also very fortunate to have these sorts of opportunities as well. So thank you, Secretary Sin, for that. We have just about 3 more minutes before we need to move on to the next segment of the agenda, but I do just want to open it up to our partners at CDPH, CWDB, but we were also very fortunate to have Director Lucero from Cal HHS's Office of Youth and Community Restoration. I wanted to add an H in there for some reason. It doesn't exist, or maybe it's silent. But with that, if the council is okay proceeding, I will ask Director Lucero if you had any thoughts. You've heard all of these investments and so on, sort of like we are discovering every day new councils, offices, commissions, and have some special guests here with us today. But this council is focused on homelessness broadly, but we have so many partners, such as OYCR, who are focusing on youth populations where this is an obvious concern.
Yes, thank you. So for those of you who aren't aware, the Office of Youth and Community Restoration was launched in 2022 pursuant to Senate Bill 823, which closed DJJ, which was a statewide youth carceral system. So my office came about, and you know, when DJJ did exist in the 90s, 10,000 kids were housed across California. When it was finally closed, when the governor signed the bill, it was less than 1,000. Today, we have 554 kids in approximately 38 smaller congregate care facilities throughout the state of California in the counties. Everything that I've heard today gives me a lot of hope because these kids are the same kids. They're the kids that need our mental health services. They're the kids that need our McKinney-Vento services, and they're the kids that often come over from our foster care. Same families, same zip codes, same issues. So I'm just kind of taking it all in. I'm really glad to know that you're here. My office does help with transition out of those facilities. When I am in those facilities and I ask kids, what are you worried about for when you're done and when you get to go home, and they say, I don't know where I'm going to live. And we all know that you need stable housing in order to be a safe and pro-social and thoughtful participant in our society. So I say to keep them off the pipeline to prison, we need to get them stable housing. So I'll keep mining this field that you all are presenting today because I think there's a lot of overlap. And thank you for letting me share today.
Thank you, Director Lucero. Very much appreciate your participation. We'll go back to sort of the top of our alphabet here. We have community colleges, if you all wanted to share.
Sure. I'm sharing for Rowena Tomaning. I'm Stacy Shears. So I just would share that we have the California Community College Housing and Homelessness Initiative program, and that provides funding to 28 community colleges to support students experiencing housing insecurity and homelessness. The program receives $20.5 million from the California state budget and focuses on helping institutions build partnerships and expand services such as housing support, case management, basic needs, resources, and improving student stability, retention, and overall success. I would also add that it's a key strategy for HIP, we call it HIP, is collaboration, and we collaborate with our Next Step program, which includes foster youth, focused on supporting current and former foster youth, as well as rising scholars, so students who've been justice impacted. And so it's really like an integrated effort of support with our HIP. So we're community college, so we go the whole gamut from dual enrolled, under 18 years old, all the way up to maybe 70, 80 years old. So there's probably a sweet spot in between that's pretty much youth, but we're not only focused on youth, except some of the other programs tend to actually have a lot of youth.
Thank you for that. I'm curious for the current and former foster youth initiative. Is there a time, like a deadline by which somebody would be eligible for that, or is it so long as you can, so long as you've been you were in foster care at some point in time, even if you're that 75-year-old?
Yeah.
Great, that's great.
That's it. There's no like monitoring,
Right.
and now you have to go. No.
Right. Which for those of you that included dates on yours, or ages rather, on your slides, we have no statewide alignment in our definition of youth. It is just as varied as this council is. So I appreciate that. CDPH.
Good afternoon, Stephanie Weldon, Deputy Director of the Office of Health Equity at CDPH. Our programming and particular work is focused on true upstream and upriver prevention and maybe a little bit of early intervention. We have a lot of programming throughout the department that maybe not directly focused, but has a component or tracks or serves or keeps in mind. In our team in the Office of Health Equity, we have one housing and homeless health equity lead and a research scientist, and they're focused on two of the action steps within the plan. And we're developing an housing and homeless equity cabinet and working on a landscape analysis, both internally and externally. And we're going to use those findings to inform policies and practices and guide those actions. But I just want to highlight a couple of the programs that we have some data on, some of that work, particularly in the Center for Family Health. We have Adolescent Family Life program, which works with partners and community organizations to address systemic barriers, including housing. And there's case managers. It's a strength-based resiliency focused program for pregnant and parenting youth under 22. Just some data, our findings around that is around approximately 10.1% of program participants ages 12 to 21 experienced homelessness, which is approximately around 1,068. And then the Black Infant Health Housing Assessment Program has about 9.65% of participants ages 12 to 21 experience homelessness. And then want to really mention really upstream the Take Space to Pause campaign, which is coming to an end, but will continue through the Behavioral Health Services Act. We do a lot of messaging and stigma reduction as a part of that campaign in a population targeting LGBTQ plus and housing and homeless youth, really promoting mental wellness and belonging as a part of that. Just lots of programs that are associated and connected to youth who have experienced or are experiencing housing and homelessness. A lot more there, but we hope to coordinate more and make some more targeted approaches to this population as well.
Thank you for that. Yeah, in particular, in the area of prevention, right? Like we bring it up every council meeting and then every other council meeting, we're going to get to it, but it is incredibly important that there's no real end to homelessness if we don't prevent it. And so having been a county director of public health myself, value tremendously the expertise of our partner at CDPH in helping us think thoughtfully through prevention measures. So thank you for that.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
And I think you do have to go, but we have a couple of minutes if you're ready to share on initiatives from the Workforce Development Board.
I'll just raise one, which is the new federal allocation for the Workforce Investment Opportunity Act, which we are expecting, and we just received this information, a 7.8% decline in youth services funding. But the overall funding will be increased by about 15% total. So we're getting less in the adult services pool and less in the youth services pool, but we're getting a sizable increase in dislocated worker. And so there's still going to be relevant funds for folks within these age groups, but it is declining.
And does that allow for like the local workforce development boards to specialize in their own areas? Like if they see a need in youth employment specifically, like they can do some targeted investments as opposed to a dedicated set aside.
Yeah, it'll be more based on those who are experiencing unemployment. So if they had durable employment prior, then they would be eligible for dislocated. If they are not, then they'd be eligible still for the youth services funds.
I see. Thank you for that. And thank you for helping us meet quorum today, even though I know you have a flight to catch. And with that, we'll move to Department of Rehabilitation with Director Rutledge.
All right, thank you. At the Department of Rehabilitation, we provide employment services to any individual with a disability who has any kind of barrier to employment that is due to a disability. And as we all know, another barrier to housing specifically for people with disabilities is accessibility, physical accessibility often, as well as cost. Additionally, we have a student services program that provides pre-employment transition services to youth that are ages 16 to 22. And a big part of that pre-employment transition service program is we have vocational rehabilitation counselors working directly with the LEAs in the school districts to provide youth with services to help them be prepared to enter the workforce with a disability as adults. As I mentioned, housing is a key to employment stability. So without a house, it's really hard to keep a job. We also have, with this in mind, we have in every one of our geographic district offices, community resource navigators that help anyone who comes into our program coordinate multi-system supports, including housing. So a few examples of how this works actually in the field for us. In San Bernardino County, we have the Successful Outcomes Achieving Responsibility, or SOAR program, where we partner with the San Bernardino County Department of Behavioral Health and Cal State San Bernardino to focus on youth with behavioral health issues, and also youth that are re-entry out of justice involved who have disabilities. And we help provide them housing advocacy and referral, as well as employment in that program. In the Greater East Bay, we have our community resource navigators there are working closely with OICR. Statewide, we have in 8 counties a partnership with OICR to work directly with youth with disabilities who are coming out of the juvenile justice system. In LA County, we work really closely with LAHSA, as well as with our McKinney-Vento liaisons within the school district to provide emergency housing referrals, public benefit and navigation services, school-based support for housing insecure students with disabilities, and engagement for youth with disabilities affected by community violence. And then finally, also in the Van Nuys Foothill area in Southern California, we work closely with the AJCC on a youth at work program, which provides paid work experience, financial literacy, and career readiness for transition age youth. Also, we work closely with a drop-in center in that area that helps provide transition age youth with some of those other supports that they need as they're also job seeking.
Thank you for that overview, Director Rutledge. Had no idea that there was a unique partnership with our friends at LAHSA, but we learn something new every council meeting, so thank you for that. On that note, I will say this is not the entirety of our council that provided either a formal presentation or verbal comment. In our briefings, we did, though, have some really great discussions with our partners at state hospitals, our partners at CDCR, around discharge planning or parole planning back into community for youth specifically, and so much more opportunity to come there. But I see I've said something that excites Secretary Moss.
Well, this whole conversation was very exciting, but I just was thinking it might be nice if staff could provide a summary of all that we've heard from our council members today on our website and other channels so that the public has access. Certainly all the materials prior to the meeting, but this feels like, as I was listening to the parade of services and programs that we're providing to young people, I'm hearing things for the first time, as many of us may be. And so I think it could be very helpful to the public to have access to this information post today's conversation.
Thank you, Secretary. We may have lost the internet connection, so Claire's going to help me here, but I will just quickly react to that. We have two fantastic tools on our website. One is our action plan dashboard that allows for folks to filter and search with keywords such as youth, for example, or pay, however specific you want to be, and then it'll list out all of the activities, not just the funding sources, but all of the activities, which is why we were able to pull so easily onto the slides. Like this relates to activity 1B, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then separate from the action plan dashboard, we have the funding navigator, which speaks specifically to the available dollars. And again, you can filter and search by keywords such as youth. So, but yes, it will also be comprehensively captured in our meeting minutes, which will be adopted at September's meeting, just so folks have a record of these additional things that are not necessarily specific to youth or specific to homelessness. Thank you, Claire Bannerman, for getting me back online. With that, we're almost right back on time, but we're going to transition now. We have invited some special guests to join us today. And as I said, who knows, a few slides ago, could have been an hour ago, we're not short on discovering new commissions, boards, councils, and one is not new to us. We'll have Javon Wilkes, who's been such a great member of our Cali Sage Advisory Committee for several years now, speak to us about the work of his organization. We're also joined by Executive Director Tamisha Wallace from the good Lord, I've said it 17,000 times, and it's the Youth Empowerment Commission. That's how important it is. And then we are very fortunate to have a youth with lived experience who has joined us virtually to offer from their perspective, and is an intern at the American Indian Cultural Center in San Francisco. And so providing us insight from their perspective with lived expertise, but also in the space of community and culture. So with that, I will take a pause, a drink of water, introduce Mr. Javon Wilkes, who is the Executive Director for the California Coalition for Youth, and as mentioned, also Cali Sage Advisory Committee member. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Megan. Good afternoon, Chair and members. I will say that I prayed for the day that my brothers and sisters with lived experience with homelessness, foster care, incarceration, probation, poverty would lead us and a generation of youth to the future, and a promising one at that. And so I thank you for uplifting youth in a mighty way. And boy, oh boy, do we have much work to do. And it is done from heart. And it's greatly appreciated. So again, I'm Javon Wilkes, Executive Director with the California Coalition for Youth, Cal Youth for short, and a proud member of the Cal ICH Advisory Committee. And so thank you all again for the opportunity to speak on California's youth experiencing homelessness along with the young adults. And so at Cal Youth, we believe young people in California deserve access to services, resources, and support they need to live fulfilling lives. For decades, our organization has worked statewide to improve outcomes for vulnerable youth ages 12 to 24. I know that it's not necessarily defined, but we are looking to focus on those 12 to 24, especially those experiencing homelessness, disconnection, and instability. Next slide. And all this information y'all will get as well. So at Cal Youth, we continue to respond through advocacy, leadership, development, membership, the California Youth Crisis Line, which is 24/7, 7 days a week. Our Executive Advocacy Day, bringing folks together, our Youth Empowerment Summit, our Cal Youth Tour, where we go across the state of California, uplifting youth homelessness outreach, prevention, and education during that month. And of course, our statewide youth engagement efforts. We believe youth voice must remain centered in every conversation and every solution. Next slide. What we're seeing across California is deeply concerning. Youth homelessness is often a life course issue. Before a young person ever enters the homelessness response system, there are usually warning signs: family conflict, foster care involvement, educational disruption, mental health challenges, or other systemic interactions where early intervention could have changed the outcome. We also know that homelessness for young people look different compared to adults. Many youth remain hidden. They are couch surfing, moving from place to place, sleeping in cars, on the streets, hotels, shelters, or an unstable situation that often go unseen by traditional systems. In fact, 72% of youth who experience street shelter or car homelessness also reported staying with others while homeless. Homelessness is a fluid process, and homelessness is fluid for youth, and our systems must respond accordingly. Next slide. As of 2025, only 2.93%. How much of that is on my hand? Can anybody guess 2% on my hand? Let's go ahead and take that away. That's basically what it looks like. All of homelessness inventory beds in California. 2%, almost 3%. And while California has approximately 6,570 youth beds statewide, over 20,000 additional beds are needed. Even more alarming, the state has seen a decrease in youth beds since 2024, including a decline in child-only emergency beds. Next slide. At the same time, funding uncertainty threatens the progress California has made through youth-specific homelessness investments and specialized youth-serving programs. Despite multiple funding streams, support for this population remains limited, temporary, and often one-time. Major disparities to exit between foster youth and youth experiencing homelessness outside of child welfare. Next slide. So the numbers are clear, y'all. This is an ongoing situation where investments is needed for prevention and early intervention, and that matters. And youth need developmentally appropriate, specifically for youth. I don't know what y'all was doing when y'all was young, but when I was young, life was truly something to be lived out, but also something to endure. And just imagine what youth are enduring right now. And then you throw in homelessness. And then you throw in the cliffs from the systems. That's the work that needs to be done. And so adolescents are young adults and are in a critical period of their development, and interventions during this stage can change the trajectory of their entire life. And so, of course, I'm urging this council to commit and continue to prioritize youth experience and homelessness as a distinct and urgent need. Today, we need to sustain investments for the future of homelessness, the system involvement, and long-term public cost is something we must consider. Most importantly, we must remember that behind every number is a young person deserving of safety, belonging, opportunity, hope, and love. I would not be here without the grace of God, a support system, and truly those doors that were open to me when I was homeless at the age of 14. We need y'all. We appreciate y'all for uplifting this conversation. And there's a whole lot of work to be done. Review those slides. A lot of information in there, okay? And a lot of information that's in this room. So thank you for doing this all together.
Thank you so much, Javon. And I just want to acknowledge the tremendous amount of advocacy that Javon and his team and continuing to hold myself accountable, the work of Cal ICH staff accountable, ensuring that we never lose sight of this population. From a data perspective, I will just offer that the disparities we talk about broadly and in homelessness broadly are exacerbated when we look at our youth population. And when we talk about outcomes, they have some of the worst outcomes when compared to families with children, when compared to single adults, even when compared to our older adult population. And so when we talk about equity, which was the buzzword before accountability took its place. It is something that is serious and demands addressing in the work of the council. So thank you, Javon. I appreciate you and your expertise. Moving on now to our second special guest, who got an email from a strange lady many months ago, like, this is who I am. Who are you and what are you all doing? I understand you have a strategic plan and youth homelessness is a goal. Would love to learn more because we too have a plan. So anyway, with that, welcome to Misha Wallace. Excited to hear from you and the work of your commission.
Thank you for that anonymous email. It started a very necessary partnership. So as mentioned, Tamisha Wallace, Executive Director for the California Youth Empowerment Commission. I'd like to say that we are literally the new kids on the block in state government. So thank you for having us here, Council. Excited to share a bit more about our work. We were birthed from the pandemic. As you just heard Javon mention, young people are enduring and have been enduring a lot, especially over the past 6 years. A 16-year-old intern actually initially drafted this legislation because they realized that youth voice was missing from a lot of decisions that were being made at the state level during that time. And a very critical piece of that legislation is that we have youth who are ages 14 through 25, but also 5 of those commission seats. There's 13 total seats, 11 appointed by the governor's office, 1 by the Senate, 1 by the Assembly. 5 of those young people have to be youth with lived experience navigating systems. Of course, as we're discussing here, that value of lived experience is imperative for us moving forward as they understand those nuances and the details of these programs and services. So I am honored to work alongside these commissioners as we are advisory to the governor's office, the legislature, and the superintendent of public instruction on matters impacting young people. Our legislation, AB 46, was championed by, at the time, Assemblymember Luz Rivas. And there's a very non-exhaustive list of policy priorities that this commission can choose to focus on. However, working with our research partners early on at the Possibility Lab, we identified youth homelessness, mental health, and education as the 3 priority areas. As we know, our young people are not stable if they're not stable in those 3 areas. So for the past year or 2 years now, excuse me, our commission has been traveling statewide. We've traveled as far north as Klamath, California, in conversation with Indigenous young people on those policy areas, and as far south as Imperial, California, having the same conversation with young people. As we're advising, as we're elevating your voice, your experience, what is your experience in these areas, and what do we need to know? And what we're seeing is that young people, they feel like they are oftentimes consulted and not truly considered. So something that our commission always shares is we want to move from serving youth experiencing homelessness to sharing power with youth experiencing homelessness. Our vice chair likes to say that he does not like the word empowerment because it assumes that young people do not have power. They do have power, and we think that the way that we truly change these systems is by sharing that power with those young people. So we do ask this council to consider, how do we truly institutionalize youth voice and shared governance, making sure that young people aren't a part of it, exclusive to their own advisory boards, but they're members of councils and advisory boards, that they're constantly considered, that they're constantly in conversation with you all to uplift the experiences of not only themselves, but their communities. I am also a young person who was unhoused from the Bay Area to the Central Valley, and that experience shifted based on my zip code and based on where I was. And we have to make sure that we're consulting across the state because all youth homelessness experiences are not the same. And while we're doing that, how do we also compensate these young people? Our chair of our commission very publicly shares that she's been homeless twice since her 2-year term on this commission. And travel accommodations, how do we make sure that we're supporting them and showing up into these spaces, not just financially, but with the logistics behind the scenes? If we're asking them to have a seat at the table, how are we ensuring that they're there? Is something that I also ask you all to consider. And last but certainly not least, how do we encourage state-funded youth homelessness programs to truly consult and work with youth? I heard data mentioned a few times. Youth voice is data. As we're looking at the metrics of these programs and seeing their effectiveness and how they're truly serving young people, how can we create some focus groups to talk to those young people who are receiving those services and make sure that it's truly working for them and making sure that we do not have blind spots? So we're excited to continue our work. As you heard, we do have a strategic plan. It is on our website, youthempowerment.ca.gov. That has been our work so far, is consulting, listening, learning, and building a plan to truly serve California's young people. But thank you for being here. I hope this is just the first touch base in a relationship with this commission, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. And on that note, we have our advisory committee, we have our lived experience advisory board. Cal ICH reimburses those persons with lived expertise for their time, not just for the hour, the 2-hour meeting, but what it takes to prepare yourself to absorb the information that we want you to actively engage with us on. And something that we're tremendously proud of. We also reimburse for persons who are members of California tribes that we're asking again for their time and their expertise. And this is a great segue to our last special guest with us here today. But on the note of tribal engagement, tribal relations, Vivila Blossoming Bear, who you all heard from, the start of our agenda is our tribal liaison. We retained her after we transitioned all of our grants to our sister Department of Housing and Community Development, but because we know the disparities that exist in our data as it relates to native experiences of homelessness, particularly in youth populations. We produced the state's first policy briefing on tribal homelessness, where we took a different approach. A lot of our federal programs, whether it's violence prevention or intimate partner violence programs, tribal programs are not in HMIS, which means they're not in HDIS, but acknowledge the disparities that exist. So that policy brief is the product of about a year's worth of deep tribal engagement, going out to tribes, engaging directly with them instead of asking them to come to us. Klamath is beautiful, but it is remote. But so asking, what can we do to make this relationship a relationship, as opposed to here's the summit, come to us and we'll check that box and be done with it. So the tribal policy brief is something that is qualitative, but speaks to, you said youth voice is data, and we feel the same. So trying to identify the other opportunities that exist in councils, commissions, boards, etc., but certainly wanting to find ways to align with our colleagues in the Youth Empowerment Commission, so that we're supporting each other in this important work. So with that, I would like to introduce you all to a young leader who's currently serving as an intern with the San Francisco American Indian Cultural Center. And has, as I mentioned earlier, lived experience, but is also recognized for their important perspective and dedication to this work. So Really appreciate you joining us this afternoon. TK, I will turn it over to you.
How's it going, everybody? My name is Tokala Halsey, American Bear, but you guys can call me TK for short. Happy to be here on behalf of the American Indian Cultural Center. Yeah.
Thank you for joining. So we're going to do this sort of like a QA style. So TK, if you can share with our council a little bit about who you are and as it relates to your beliefs around housing and homelessness and our engagement with young folks, if you can share with the council a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Shoot. So just for a little bit who I am, I'm from San Francisco, 19 years old. I would just want people to know that homelessness, it can happen to anyone, you know. As much as possibly you could think your housing situation is secure, nothing is promised because, you know, just coming from my own experience that just recently I was living in a house, San Francisco, and then just stuff wasn't working. The landlords, they weren't working with us. So then my mom just decided to move, and so we had we had my cousin, my two cousins living with us, and then so we moved out, and we have two dogs, two pets with us. So then we're looking. My mom was like, "Oh, I have one, you know, that we're eyeing." And then all of a sudden, we lose track of that one, and we're basically homeless. And just I'm still blessed in the meantime that mom's lucky enough to just afford like say like an Airbnb for like say a week or two, or just constantly just rotating. And you know, and then it even came to the point where we were living in a hotel room outside of San Francisco, down in South San Francisco. But you know, I just believe that it could happen to anyone. Shoot, I never thought I'd ever lived that experience. But you know, with any experience, you always got to see the great in it, and what you could do to just be like, I know what that's like, and to just never be back in that. And also just, you know, as a young adult too, just to never want myself to be in that position, or just to, you know what it's like, especially. And yeah, that's pretty much what I guess say for the who I am part. But yeah.
Thank you for sharing. I want to jump us down to that last question that's on the slide here. What supports or approaches have worked for you, and what have you seen work for others that would be helpful for this council to hear?
I would just say knowing people who have resources or know of some, because it only takes one person, or at least like, you know, some trusted adults to get you in the right movement, the right space. But then I'd also say just staying connected to the culture, most importantly, no matter what. Like even when I was on this little stump of being homeless, I'd have my drum and dance class in Oakland across the bay. That would always like in a sense keep me grounded. And, or even our own drum and dance class in San Francisco, just you know, that would just really just keep me grounded. And the power is to say on the weekends to just take my mind away from that stuff. But then also I would say networking and just brainstorming ideas. Because like for example, I go to the National Youth Conference, the Unity Conference, good amount every year. And I'd say just networking and brainstorming and meeting new people would just, I don't know, that's always good support methods, because you never know who you'll meet, and you'll never know who could help you out. But and then also just friends and family to just keep me grounded, and just, you know, some love of here and there, self-reflection, because sometimes self-reflection is really all you need to just, even just within yourself for your mental. But yeah.
Thank you for that, TK. I know in our tribal homelessness policy brief, some of our findings were, you know, multi-generational housing. So you had, you know, cousins, aunts, second cousins, you know, folks who you're moving into the double digits in terms of folks who are living together, and that being a benefit, you know, keeping that connection to family, to culture, as you mentioned, but also the stress of living in a single space that is sometimes unstable. But you know, the sheer number of people being a challenge for some. I wonder if you can share with us from your experience, sort of like navigating those resources that you're in need of while simultaneously caring for family who is in, you know, the same situation as you.
Oh yeah, like I'd say for example, just growing up, I'd always go over to my grandma's house when I was a young kid, and we'd always have a bunch of family members like just staying over. And when you first think of it just as a little kid, and you're like, oh, like there's family coming over, like that's good, like family you haven't seen in a while. But then later on, as you realize that that they're not just here to just visit, like they're just there because they need a place to stay and they don't have anywhere else to go. And and that's the part of like where you kind of look out for family members who need that resource, or even like have a family member who stays with you for like a few months or even at a few weeks at a time to even for that. But yeah, I don't know, I think just sometimes you just got to be open to just to give people opportunities just to see how far they can go with what you want to do. Sorry.
Thank you. No, you're doing good. So long as you're not driving. Are you driving? I feel like this is illegal. Okay, okay. It's like I feel like this is a legal obligation question I have to ask, but
No, my seatbelt wasn't on. Sorry.
okay, okay. I know our attorney watches this, so okay. Lawrence, I know I can feel your eyes somewhere in the ether, but TK, final thing that if you can share with us, if there was one takeaway, these are department directors, these are cabinet secretaries, some who have set aside programs for tribal engagement, some who don't. But from your perspective as a young Native person, as a young person in California in one of the most expensive cities, what is the one thing that you would want to leave these council members with?
I would just say always hear out the youth on their ideas. They know how they would want to run their program or just what environment they would want to be in. But I think most of all is trust. Trust is a big thing. Even just growing up, there'd be some programs out there, and I'd be iffy on it just because I didn't really know the program. There'd be new people taking it over. But I would just say community and cultural events are helpful, but also teach money management to the next generation of youth because sometimes, like me, I like to spend my money and I like to spend it on things that I don't really need. And at the same time, there's better things I could be saving it on just, as I get older because, but mainly, importantly, never take anything for granted because anything in life can be gone tomorrow. And also, bring back Paula Powell. All right, thank you.
Thank you, TK. We really appreciate you joining us and appreciate you spending some time with us. And with that, council members, we'll move on to the final portion of this item, which is, yes, round of applause for all of our presenters. We have some discussion considerations for you all. I know we're going to lose some folks. If we lose quorum, we will note that we've lost quorum and keep some conversation for next council meeting. But we'll open it up to you all, council members, but these are just meant to inspire sort of conversation. Where are the greatest opportunities for California to prevent youth homelessness before a young person enters into the response system? And second, given our limited resources, where should California focus its policy, coordination, and funding efforts to achieve the greatest impact for youth who are at risk or actively experiencing homelessness? I just knew it. I knew it. I felt it coming. Councilmember Lewis, thank you.
Well, I just want to thank Javon, Tamisha, TK. Thank you so much for sharing your perspectives and for being in this work and for standing in the gap for folks who are not yet at the table, right? Pushing your way to the table, making an impact at the table, and just continuing to speak truth to power. And thank you to all of the department heads or leadership that shared the information. It's a lot of information to absorb. I did not know about a lot of the different things that were presented, so I'm not necessarily answering your questions, but it's been an hour that I've been waiting to talk. So I know you mentioned when Secretary Moss asked about the information, I know you mentioned the dashboard, but for me, I just think about all the different entities across the state that are supporting youth and don't necessarily understand all these things. And I don't know that the online dashboard accomplishes that. So I wonder if there's something else that we could do just to get the information, like organize it, categorize it, get the info inclusive of the differences of ages and different definition of homelessness, which is a separate comment I have. Like, I wonder if we can organize in a way where people fully understand how to access it. Certainly some of them are closed referrals. We understand that, but I think we could do a little bit better at making sure folks understand what this looks like and really ensuring that people have a grasp of the breadth and depth of resources available, because I can tell you people do not. And I think that it needs to go a little bit beyond the dashboard. So, and I'm willing to work alongside your team, Megan, to support that, but I do think we need to go a step further than just the online dashboard. So I'll support that. And I think it's critical. I think the other thing is, when we talk about the misalignment, obviously some of it is related to federal policies and guidelines, et cetera. I'm still wondering if at some point this body can start to try to understand if there are opportunities to reduce some of the burdens in terms of folks having to jump, young people having to jump through different hoops and it's just a lot. It's a lot. All these system navigation pieces are difficult, but in particular, when we talk about young adults who may or may not have support systems, like, is that something we can possibly consider as a council to see if they're, to the extent possible, with consideration of the constraints of some of the federal guidance and policies, like, see if we can still come into greater alignment where possible? Is that?
Yeah, it's not just a possibility, it's a mandate in SB 918, which we will definitely be delving more into in these next several months. But having wherever we can align, wherever there's flexibility or something isn't in statute, can the council adopt, like language across itself? Recognizing, of course, there are some programs that are in statute they have very tight definitions, but even that is helpful for the council to be fluent in, so that when we're talking to the legislature, when we're going to these hearings, we're reminding them that some of these challenges in how we describe population is a limitation imposed on the departments. It's not for the lack of coordination and effort amongst ourselves.
Yeah, I think it could be really powerful and ultimately impactful on the ground if we can work towards that. And then two more things. I had a question for you, William, about the McKinney-Vento. So does CDE fund the liaisons or support that work, or you just monitor? And then the other question was about when you said you monitor kind of their implementation or how well or not they're following all the things that are supposed to happen as it relates to McKinney-Vento at the local level. I just want to understand a little bit more about what that looks like, because we know that it's varied across the state and it's not necessarily as strong as it can be in certain areas of the state. So first question, do you all fund those liaisons? And then second, like, if you could say a little bit more about the monitoring, and then I got one more comment after that.
Okay, no, cool deal. So it's federally funded. So California Department of Education does not fund it ourselves, but it's federally funded. And then we have our team at the department who supports with the monitoring and implementation of it. So they support with technical assistance, reviewing policy, reviewing federal guidelines and things of that nature, and then trying to get things to come in line where it needs to be strengthened.
Thank you. And I said one more. I'm doing like him. One more, but two more. For DPH, I was really excited to hear that you all have CDPH. You all have things for people under 18, because unfortunately, those folks are left out in a lot of the programming. And you said, I think you all are about to do an assessment that's going to inform. Just can you say a little bit more about the timeline for that assessment?
I know we are starting it, I think next week. My team members here, who actually, Emily knows the timeline. Do you want to say more about the timeline?
We are hoping to have it complete by December and report out.
But we can email you more specifics around timeline.
And then lastly, I really appreciate it. And Thomas, this may be in you all's strategic plan already, but this is something that's come up for youth and folks with lived experience or expertise in general, right? Like, having separate bodies is a start, but having meaningful incorporation at the different tables, which also means equipping folks, right? Because I chair a committee related to justice involvement locally, and we have 2 youth folks, but the prep work, it's not just about compensation and logistics. It's also preparing and making sure the space makes sense and they can contribute, right? But I wonder if, and if this isn't your strategic plan, let me know. But I wonder if the state can come up with some guidance for jurisdictions about how to meaningfully do that, because I think a lot of folks are grappling with that, and grateful for the lived experience bodies and the youth. But to your point, it's over here, and sometimes it's literally a check mark, right? Sometimes they're more engaged than others. Sometimes they're at the end of the road just to say we asked them what they thought, right? Whether or not it actually changes anything. So wondering if it's a part of your strategic plan, we'd love to hear about what you guys are thinking. But even if it's not, I feel like, again, I know we got a lot going on. It's a brand new agency and department, but I feel like figuring out some guidance to help people understand what that actually means, so youth voices are at the different tables, not just set aside at their own table, I think would be really important.
Yeah, and that the inclusion has been something that we've, we're a small entity, going to be a small department, but we've had seats reserved for, on our advisory committee, on the LEAB, and have done a tremendous amount of learning over this first iteration of our own LEAB. Have some best practices and standards of engagement, those sorts of things that we're working with like a handful of counties, continuums of care, thinking about how can Cal ICH help you. We have a division of local initiatives, which is meant to support local implementation of state guidance, state requirements, etc. Faith-based organizations has come up as well as youth. Communities don't have capacity to be, especially if you're a small, rural, or under-resourced community, you don't have resources to develop, a certain level of expertise in all areas. And so what can the state do to step in to support? And as I said, the two areas that have come up consistently are, we don't have time to figure out what does it look like to engage with faith-based organizations. We don't have time necessarily to think about what does it look like to incorporate youth with lived expertise into existing bodies. That's where the state can be helpful. So yeah, that's absolutely on our radar. But with that,
I'll jump, or with somebody next.
Or just quickly, capacity has been a concern of the commission, so we are absolutely, it's not within our strategic plan, but slowing down to educate our commissioners to level set. With commissioners ranging from 14 through 25, there's also a knowledge gap in what a lot of the commissioners are coming to the table prepared to discuss. So again, leveraging the partnership with the Possibility Lab, discussing an onboarding process for the commissioners, as we will be onboarding 7 new commissioners this fall, and making sure that they are prepared to do this work. So something that we're discussing. Thank you.
which I'll just reiterate, like we would love to partner with you all and whatever that could look like in the space of housing and homelessness, which is, it's the solutions are not complicated. It's housing, but the system itself is so complex. And so, myself, our team are available to help. We do a fairly robust onboarding for our lived experience advisory board members, for our advisory committee members, all the way down to like, how is California state government structured? What is a city's relationship to a county? What is their relationship to a COC? What is their relationship to a state department? And so on. And that in and of itself is, you can get a master's degree. And so, but yeah, we're here to partner. And that obviously goes to all of our council member departments as well.
Yeah, no, thank you. And please invite the Department of Education in. We would love to listen, and our team is really ready to support. I believe that looking at question 1, the greatest opportunities, thank you for sharing your story too, King. I think listening to the youth, because unfortunately, if they're already at this point of not having stable housing, I believe they can support us with learning about some warning signs. And I think that's something that's important, because if we're talking about before a young person enters homelessness, then I think we can do a better job, more effective job at listening. And then the young man that was online who spoke about finance, learning about that, I think that's something important. Superintendent Thurman really supported and championed a personal finance curriculum that all high school students will be taking now in their senior year. And so wanting to really expand that, get that information out to your organizations as well. And I think that the other opportunity is how do we data share? You mentioned data sharing agreements. How do we share data? Because just looking at it, schools are the hubs in our community. Schools are everywhere. And so how do we share data so then that way when we are working with families, our liaisons are working with families, there's this seamless connection to the work development board? Because unfortunately, more than likely, some of the families may need employment, right? So how are we connecting to Caltrans for support with fiscal resources in regard to transportation? Again, you mentioned about the homeless liaisons. A lot of the work is federally funded. At times, I believe there are opportunities for families to receive vouchers, but it's not unlimited. So how do we then say, hey, we have this where our families are receiving something for a week, we need that continued support. So wondering what this looks like, how we can grapple. And the last thing, and I know I love that too, we're back together, so I'm back on the council again, right? But you all did something I felt was very effective last year when I was on the
Great,
council.
love to hear it.
Yes, I'm about to tell you. You actually broke us up and we had conversations. Who remembers that? We actually had conversations where we were going deep into the data. So I believe, where is it? Where does it say? I can't, I'm not reading well right now, but bring us together. Let us grapple with some actually policy development. So then that way we can listen to the youth, we can listen. And then if we're this commission, then let us grapple with some policy, give you guys some ideas so you could take it back and then bring it back to us for final refinement.
Yeah, our attorney definitely remembers that because it was a Bagley-Keene nightmare to try to negotiate like these breakout tables. But it's something we've done it before. We can absolutely do it again. And more importantly, we can work with our partners, whether it's the Youth Empowerment Commission or Cal Youth, who has their annual summit to host like a meeting, a council meeting, in connection with like the schedule of events for either one of those bodies, so that you're hearing from folks who are participating. I do have to flag we did lose quorum, and so but did see Secretary Snyder Ashtari's hand earlier. If you're good, okay, so sorry. But that will have to end the discussion because we've lost quorum. So apologies for that. I'm so sorry. It's been we'll do 4 hours next time instead of 3. You guys will love that. But with that, we're going to move on to the public comment portion of our agenda. We will not, as we never do, have an opportunity to respond, but in particular because we've lost quorum. So with that, I'll turn it over to Claire to facilitate.
Right, thank you, everyone. So we will now accept general public comment. Thank you. So thank you all for your patience, and we appreciate any council members for who stay to listen to public comment as well. We welcome all comments and feedback. However, due to the structure of this public meeting, we will not be able to respond to any questions. If you have any questions for CalICH or the council, please email us at calich@bcsh.ca.gov. We did receive written public comment before this meeting, and it was provided to council meetings prior to the meeting and will be available to the public upon request. We also received 2 additional written public comments this morning that will be included in my follow-up email. In the past, everyone had 2 minutes for their general public comment. However, given the number of persons with lived expertise providing comment, everyone will now be offered 3 minutes. A CalICH staff member will soon share their screen with a 3-minute countdown timer, and we will warn you when your time has expired. I will start with any public comments in the room. However, if you are connected through Zoom, please select the raised hand icon in the meeting window on your computer, and I will ask you to unmute when it is your turn. If you are on by telephone, please press *9 to indicate that you would like to comment. All right, do we have any public comment in the room? Okay, we'll do one at a time. Please state your name and if you're with an organization.
Good afternoon, Kim Lewis with the California Coalition for Youth. And just wanted to follow up on Javon's comments a little bit and just thank Megan and the the co-chairs for having this conversation today. I know I've spoken many times before at your council meetings to raise the issue around young people experiencing homelessness, and as the co-sponsors of SB 918 on the need to attend to this special population. Youth are so developmentally different and fundamental in our response, that we need to have youth appropriate services and supports for them. We cannot incorporate them into the adult homelessness response system. This does not work for them. It is not a successful outcome for them. And nor should we ever think that a young person sleeping on the streets is anything a good idea. And the amount of trauma that it exposes a young person to, and it also hurts their chances of being stably housed in the long run. Right. And so this also feeds into our population of chronically homeless adults, where the research shows that 50% of young people, folks who've experienced chronic homelessness, had their first episodes when they were young people. So to that life course issue that Javon posted on, if we can address things as far upstream as possible, we can make such meaningful differences in the long run. There are so many federal threats at the federal level in terms of loss of funding. And I know that the challenges at addressing that with this current federal administration is not easy. And so when we do have state programs like PAP and others, and definitions may be what they are, but they also can fill gaps. And where we can't make those changes at the federal level, we should be able to be savvy enough at the local level and at the state level to be able to use these dollars in a meaningful way to fill in those places where we can't. And then I would also say that, you know, there is youth who are on their own, youth and families, there is the veterans and single adults. We really want to be focusing on our unaccompanied youth, because we do believe that they are the most vulnerable in these populations. And then there is a lot of funding that is at risk, and it's one time and time limited. And I would challenge the council member departments and agencies to think about, how do you guys advocate for these young people by, when you see these dollars that are running out, can we put forward budget change proposals? Can you put forward and put pressure on the administration to say, like, why are these dollars expiring? Why can we not invest in this? And why can we not make that continued commitment to them on an ongoing basis? I think they deserve that at the least, that we can do this. Some of those programs that were talked about under OES, for example, are expiring. HAP has been a one-time thing, even though it's been a multi-year commitment. And I think we have to remember the first year when we had the 5% set aside, in Tehama County, for example, was like, well, we had no idea we had young people experiencing homelessness in our community. And that's what sometimes these set-asides and these other interventions have been able to do, is cause communities to open their eyes and see the young people in their backyards who they've been missing for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, please state your name and if you're with an organization. I know it's kind of awkward. It's all right. I got this.
Hi, Al. I'm Sherilyn Adams. I'm the CEO of Larkin Street Youth Services in San Francisco and Alameda County. For over the past 42 years, we've been providing housing, engagement, safety, shelter, outreach, workforce development, education, and a host of other youth leadership development, a host of other services to young people in San Francisco. And now we're also in Alameda County. I'm also a board member for Cal Youth and have been for the past 23 years. Javon and I were 4 when we met. I want to really highlight the Office of Emergency Services funding that is expiring. And I want to tell you what's going to happen when that funding expires. There will be a loss of at least 3 minor shelters, 1 in El Dorado County, 1 in Alameda County, and 1 in Orange County, potentially. Those are the only shelters for minors in those communities. And we already lost 400 and something beds, right? And we have less than 3% of what we need in this state for young people experiencing homelessness. There will be rapid rehousing programs and transitional housing programs that will either go away or shrink in Santa Clara County, in San Bernardino County, in San Diego County, and in LA County. In San Francisco, the 40 hotel vouchers we provide each month for young people will likely go away. Food is one of the biggest services, the biggest thing that we provide, that the 12 nonprofits, 8 of whom will go away. Not, they won't go away. Those nonprofits will not go away, but they are the ones that will lose their grants. These are one-time, and they end either at the end of December 2026 or end of June 2027. So around the holidays and around the end of school, our message to young people will be, you don't get to have shelter. You don't get to have emergency housing. You don't get to have transitional housing. You don't get help with food. Thousands of young people have been fed Young people come into our our engagement center every day hungry. No young person should be hungry. And we've seen like a 67% increase in the number of young people that we're serving in our emergency shelter, so our engagement center. So the need's not going down, it's going up. The long tail of COVID, how many young people exited the education system, have disrupted education. You know what causes homelessness? You don't get a high school education. You parent early. You are Black, you are trans. That's what are the high risk factors to causing you to be homeless. We have to do better as a state across all of these departments, but we can't lose the little bit of housing that we right now and shelters that we right now have for young people. Look, I'm done. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
No,
I should
you're
take
good.
that home.
No, you're fine.
Okay, I'm not gonna take it home.
Thank you.
Can I put this down?
Of course you can.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Council Chair and members, ICH staff, community members and colleagues. My name is Dr. Coco Auerswald. I'm a pediatrician and a faculty member at UC Berkeley School of Public Health. And I've conducted youth-partnered community-based research regarding youth homelessness for 29 years. I'm the faculty lead for Youth and Allies Against Homelessness, a Berkeley-based lab of whom 60% of us have lived experience of homelessness. I would like to celebrate 2 state successes in addressing youth homelessness that could be expanded to further prevent, address, and end youth homelessness. We conducted a mixed method evaluation of HAP rounds 1 through 3 set-aside funding, and it is no doubt a resounding success. Communities not only met, but exceeded the prescribed minimums by 16% or $23 million. In addition, HAP youth set-aside funding increased access to services for little served populations such as minors and youth from often neglected geographic areas in target communities such as isolated rural areas. Furthermore, the HAP youth set-aside funding allows for investment in youth-specific programs, employing youth development approaches that build on youth strengths and youth agency to allow them to thrive in the long term and help them navigate the complex systems that my colleague was bringing up here earlier in her discussion. So our respondents let us know that this funding is critical and that the fact that the funding is allocated yearly and not on an ongoing basis is an obstacle for them to develop long-term interventions, particularly in smaller communities that have no money to front long-term enduring interventions. Another enormous cross-sector success has been AB 12, which extended foster care into early adulthood. However, the majority of youth experiencing homelessness haven't been in the foster care system, and so they don't have access to these services, even though these 2 groups are actually indistinguishable. So the 35% of youth who had foster experience and the other 65% of youth have had the same trauma, but don't have access to the same services. Finally, prevention works. Cross-sector collaboration and data matching can identify youth at risk of homelessness and reduce homelessness by 40% or more. We have the tools to do this and could complement it with screening in juvenile justice, education, and healthcare settings. And in the last few seconds, we have lots of experience with integrating youth meaningfully in discussions as partnered, and we are releasing our latest guidelines this summer, and we're happy to help you with this. It's not rocket science. A lot of us are willing to share our expertise. Thank you. Sorry, I went over by a couple seconds.
Thank you so much. Are there any other public comments in the room? Okay, we will move to online public comment. I saw at least a couple of hands raised. Okay. All right, Brandon, you are first. Please go ahead and unmute, and you've got 3 minutes.
Excellent. Hi, thank you. Hello, council members. Hi, ICH staff. My name is Brandon Torres. I'm a project manager with John Burton Advocates for Youth, working on housing and economic mobility issues. JBay is really appreciative of the extensive updates provided today by the member departments and their efforts to support unsheltered youth throughout California. We at JBay just remain committed to ending youth homelessness in California, and we appreciate the collective action of all the council updates that were shared in this quarter. JBay supports the restructuring of the newly formed California Housing and Homelessness Agency, CHHA, and request the inclusion of an Office of Youth Homelessness within it, with a dedicated staff member to ensure the needs and efforts to end youth homelessness in California are supported with the infrastructure needed. We also wanted to highlight, as was just shared, the Youth and Allies Against Homelessness report, the YA. UC Berkeley School of Public Health research team, who released a report really highlighting the successes of HAP rounds 1 and 2. The report commissioned by ICH and HCD has a leading recommendation to make HAP a permanent funding source, in addition to promoting equitable distribution of funding across resource-poor communities, improving youth inclusion in annual counts, and simplifying HAP processes. JBay is supportive of these recommendations and encourages the council to also review the report when they have time. As we enter LGBT Pride Month, we also wanted to highlight a policy framework released by the National Network for Youth, where they estimate that 20 to 40% of youth nationwide who experience homelessness are LGBT. These youth are less likely to access services just due to discrimination in shelters, in shelter settings, and oftentimes it comes from staff as well. So we just want to encourage the council to recognize that there's an extensive need to support these youth, whether beyond just emergency housing and actually having provisions that are around clear anti-discrimination policies and training staff to create affirming environments. Ultimately, JBay wants to assist this council with creating a clear pathway to functional zero youth homelessness, and we want to ensure that the council develops and pursues a clear pathway for this, and we're happy to partner with you all. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, I have Marika next. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Marika Melman. I'm with the California Commission on Aging. This has been a fascinating meeting. I love learning all this information about the nuance concerning youth homelessness. And at first I thought, oh, this isn't my area because I'm focused on aging. But I realized throughout the meeting that there's a great parallel here in that needs for older adults are also growing as they are with youth. And older adults also need tailored services that are specific to their needs. And I heard your other commenters mention that you need to gear these services specifically in order to reach youth because of their unique needs. And I see the same exact thing happening with older adults. And also the funding cuts. There's so many proven programs that have shown positive results that are showing either no further funding or reduced funding, such as CCE, the HSTAP, Home Safe, HAP that was also mentioned, CalFresh, food. So I think I'm feeling like all these services that are trying to address this problem need to really be specific to those populations that are seeing the greatest impact. You may have already heard this data, but nearly half of the people experiencing homelessness in California right now are older than 50. It's a huge group. And I came last month also to invite you, and I'm going to invite you again to an informational hearing we're having a week from tomorrow. It's in Sacramento at the California Endowment. And the topic is permanent supportive housing for older adults. And a lot of the same vulnerabilities that are impacting our youth are impacting our older adults, such as people of color, being LGBTQ, having a disability. The same thing is happening to our population on either end. So thank you for taking my comment.
Thank you very much. Okay, up next we have Ruby. Ruby, you've got 3 minutes. Ruby, apologies. We are unable to hear you. I will come back to you. We've got one other person with their hand raised, and I'll give you another opportunity. Okay, Robert, please unmute. You've got 3 minutes.
Yes, I'd like to find out how people can get onto this the lead, and especially since I'm a person that is older. I'm 72 years old, and I continue to work with people out in the community that are unhoused, and so I see a lot of what's going on and have experienced it myself, and just don't know how I could connect up with this group other than attending these meetings. So I also noticed the chat is turned off, so there's no way I can leave my contact information. So I don't know how I can do that.
Hi,
Anyway.
Robert. I was just going to say you can email us at calich@bcsh.ca.gov, and we'll look out for your email, okay?
Okay. All right.
Great. Thank you very much for your comment.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Ruby, I don't know if you're able to. Okay, perfect. Wonderful. You've got 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for having me. Good afternoon. My name is Ruby Twelve Appeal. I acknowledge Tokala Halsey's testimony regarding the barriers our youth face. The issue isn't whether we hear them. The issue is what happens after we hear them. When my family reported unsafe shelter conditions to the Deputy Director of Kings County, Christopher Nares, the response was retaliatory CPS referral. When I escalated this to the director, Wendy Osikafo, and CDSS supervisor, Raj Shandil, their official response, and I quote, they said, "It looks like you handled it pretty good." That dismissive response reflects a culture where families are expected to absorb the risk while agencies evade the law. Today, I'm bypassing the narrative and reading your own documents into the official record. First, your HHAP grant application of Kings County submission ID NOFA-HHAP 00062 to secure state funding. You formally admitted in writing that in a typical high 86% of transitional age youth in Kings County are completely unsheltered. Second, your fiscal year of 2024 single audit under finding 2024-002. Your human service agency was cited. The human service agency was cited for failing to legally monitor federal Title 4-E foster care facilities, which was for 3 years in a row, actually, and that shows in the audits. The finding of that exact audit, the finance department was cited for material weaknesses regarding a catastrophic 30 million misstatement in investment assessment assets. On the fiscal year of 2022-2023 DHCS, a specialty mental health plan of correction, it was formally admitted to state auditors that youth are only assessed for therapeutic foster care at child family team meetings, not at initial intake. This systematically bypassing mandated medical necessity assessments for vulnerable children. System failures occurs first, intervention against families follows second. My question to the council is, this assembly member Ms. Macedo, which is part of mine, is my assembly member. Macedo, she fights for resources, but do we really enforce helping the community? Single audits, corrective action plans confirm 86% of youth on shelter rate, 30 million reporting failure, and the illegal refusal to monitor foster facilities. What concrete enforcement are we taking? We will lose funds soon. I don't know who else we can talk to, but this is what the council was made for you guys to help our communities, because we don't have anybody else. Nobody else is gonna stand up for us. Nobody else is doing anything, and we Kings County and I believe a lot of counties, they deserve to have your guys' intervention, because you guys are the only ones that are able to do anything really. We are just here to plead for something that we should be, and once eligible, we are entitled, and we are the clients, and the clients are asking you to please intervene. We thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right. Do we have any other public comment in the room? Okay, great. No other online. Great. All right. So thank you very much, council members, designees, and members of the public for attending this meeting. And with that, this meeting is adjourned at, what time is it? 4:10 or 4:09. Thank you very much. To receive up-to-date information on the council's activities, please sign up on the council's email list on our website. There's a sign up option on our webpage. We encourage you to follow Cal ICH on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. Our next council meeting will be September 2nd, 2026 from 1 to 4 p.m. Thank you very much.